What?
How does an Aggie find sheep in tall grass?
I don't know.
Very satisfying.
So, uh, 2008,
Yes, sir.
January the 1st.
January 8th, 2000 what?
Oh, I was trying to figure out what bowl game they were in.
LSU and A&M?
No, it wasn't 2008. I got my dates wrong. I'm gonna come back to you on the date. So Jennifer, do you see Rod's thing, his folksy humor, and that's just, he is the good friend.
Children's place.
When his kids were your kids' age, we used to go do something every summer.
Aiden didn't want to snuggle with me.
What?
Aiden didn't want to snuggle with
Well,
me.
that happens. Good morning. I saw the Uber pick you up yesterday.
You're right.
Permission to come aboard?
I'm the same way. I'm complaining. I'm like,
Do you think they're ready for you this morning?
I don't think so.
It doesn't feel like they're ready for what's coming.
They might have partied last night.
Did you want to take a picture? You were like, he's like, I'm here.
well, we do 25%. I'll do 30, 50. So like, if I were to send you a referral, I'm only
So
gonna.
we're gonna try to do a big class picture. All right, y'all. I wanted everybody here early so we could do a class picture. It didn't happen, as you can see. So we're gonna do it after lunch. Don't worry, Jordan, you weren't
Yeah.
doing that really fast.
Testing 1, 2. Today is June the 24th, University of Central Florida, Rosen School of Hospitality. This very well could be one of the best lip sync schools we've ever had. We've done hundreds. We love the, okay.
You said to everyone, Mike.
No, really, this is actually probably the better one.
We're actually
I'm gonna
talking
be
about that
honest.
earlier this morning.
This is my third one, third or fourth one.
Yeah. We used to do 3 a year.
We should. So yeah, I'll take the picture after lunch. I wanted to let you guys know.
Oh, so no. We came here early just to talk.
Yeah. And maybe I may have said it to make sure y'all were here early and not partying too late.
Like on Monday, you said it was 8 o'clock, and it was.
Nice evening last night?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Actually, Nate went back. So I said we left at 8. He went back and had some gator wings.
Is that right?
He stayed there till like 9. Watched the
Oh, so you didn't go in early. You were the last one to leave?
I was the last one to leave.
Not the last one to leave the establishment, but of the group.
Of the group, yeah.
How about you? What'd you do last night?
Just,
You know what? Stop right there. Whenever you got to think about it, you're going to tell me something that's not true.
I'm like,
Yes.
You know,
your boy,
it's bullshit. If it wasn't that long ago last night. So if you wanted to tell me the truth, you said, Mike, last night we went to so and so, and I had the shrimp salad.
we just hung out. Me and
No one.
Yeah. Did you have to? Do you remember where? Do you remember what time you finished?
later.
Later. Oh,
You better be
okay.
put in the hot seat.
You've told me all I want to know.
It was a decent
What's
turnout.
what's important? You establish new relationships.
Oh, 100%.
That's good. Okay. That's how my buddy Rod and I met 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 months ago.
Rod saying, don't let the truth give away a good story.
He's the first one to tell you he's bullshitting. He is, as he's telling you, he says, I'm gonna tell you this, but it's not true, but I'm gonna make it sound like it's true.
I like this guy.
That guy's good.
He has made Alexandria, Louisiana a gold mine. He has taken a town of 97,000, and they've called him Mr. Real Estate before. You know, he had his radio show, which you told you yesterday, for years. He was kind of like the authority. Still is.
I was wondering, how did he stumble into all these different avenues? Just his personality?
Because he was in a small town, and because he couldn't be a office tenant rep broker like you could be in New York in 10 city blocks. You had to take advantage of every opportunity came your way. His airport closed, he became an airport, or a military base closed, he became a consultant nationwide. after learning what to do with the air base that closed there. So he just kept making lemonade.
He really went broke in 1998?
Oh, he went broke.
Like no money. So he started over from zero in 1998.
Yeah, that happens a lot to us.
That's what
If you've really been around a long period of time, you probably went to zero at least once, and maybe minus zero. But he was right philosophically. You never felt like you were poor.
You're right.
You just said, I
that's
don't
an
have any,
attitude.
I don't have any cash, I have no assets, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
As long as you're young.
Switzerland called, you're about to have your railroad conductor status.
What time is it? 8:31?
I mean, I got 8:30.
Let's go. I'm doing presentations that win. Then I'm going to do closing techniques. When I get finished, you can know the difference between a minor point close and an alternate choice close. If we have time, I might do special sauce close. We have one called Deal Swagger. So I appreciate you sending me the photographs yesterday. The middle one you've got to delete from your phone and never distribute, okay? Because I'll pay you $1,000 to delete that photograph.
He sent it to me too.
I know that shit's now it's gone. Now it's now it's out there. Yeah. It's, and then from the closing techniques, I'm gonna do a little team brokerage. I'm gonna share with you how to create a team plan, best practices for teams. I'll even share with you some compensation plans, and then from there, I'm going to do a little bit of negotiating, primarily on the finance side, how you create a settlement range, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim, who is then going to do what we all love to watch and see him do, which is tactics, ice picks, revolving doors, change of players, all the different things that people do to us in negotiation. How do we kind of neutralize it and move forward? All right? The Yellow Brick Road. Jennifer did a fabulous job putting this together. Matter of fact, we tend to do a better job revising our slide decks in preparation of the Lipsy School, and that's why I like to come off the road in the month of June, is so that I can just spend lots of quality time with Jennifer, and it was fantastic. I took off in June, and so did Jennifer. She only spent 2 weeks in Athens and in Rome, but we still got it done, didn't we? All right. The Yellow Brick Road. The road to a winning presentation begins with runs clear. That is the determination, do you even want to make a presentation? You're going to get calls where people say, I'd like for you to do a BOV, I'd like you to maybe list my property, I appreciate you calling on me, we might have an interest in you doing tenant rep. Those of you that do that property management, so it all begins with runs clear. Not everyone you visit with, talk to on the phone is qualified. Not everyone that takes your call, has lunch with you, that takes a meeting with you is qualified. And there is a huge amount of time and money that is wasted creating presentations that you'll never win the assignment. You got to be realistic. Is this an opportunity that we're presenting to someone that has resources, that is motivated, that has authority, that is clear on what they want me to accomplish? You follow what I'm saying? Now, when you do runs clear, as we talked about 2 days ago, there's oftentimes a couple of areas where they get a low score, and your responsibility is to find a way to get that score to the next best place. From there, we set a facilitated whiteboarding session. You experienced that 2 days ago, right? And that's just about how they take place. Now, in a whiteboarding session, it becomes, in my mind, one of the most important events in the whole process. And a question I get all the time, Mike, what size opportunity do you think you do not need to do a whiteboarding session? So when I get that question all the time, when do I think that, really, I shouldn't do a whiteboarding session? They want a presentation or proposal. What size do you think that is for me? Just someone, you can say it's taller, consulting fee dollars, or, well, I'll give you the answer. I don't never, ever not do a whiteboarding session. And I mean never, ever, never. Anyone that I think is qualified, related to runs clear, is whiteboarded. It can be a person with one team member in a town of 200,000, and Mike, I'd like for you to work with our team. We want to install a CRM, and we want to have a new compensation plan. I said, you know what? I want to interview each team member, do a quick whiteboarding session so I understand collectively what's important to all of you. And at that time, I can then meet your expectations and put together a proposal on how we're going to serve you. If you want to get into a jam and have a client that's dissatisfied, don't whiteboard them. Runs clear is really not, for years I've said it's a needs analysis tool, but it's the determinant tool to determine, do you really want to do a deep dive on needs analysis and discovery? So don't think Runs Clear is the end of the story on needs analysis, but that's what most people are doing. They have a phone call or they get an RFP from a prospect and they think, I'm now ready, to start building the presentation. You're not till you do the whiteboard, all right? Next bit then is after you set the facilitate whiteboard session, and that's where I always do my alternative choice counter close. We could do this, on this morning, or we could do this on this afternoon, and which is a better time for you? Well, let me talk to my partners, let me talk to my team members, and I'll get back to you. Facilitate whiteboard session, then now you actually do the whiteboarding session. Now you actually, and so as I mentioned to you a couple days ago, in a perfect world, I come to your office and there's 3 people that I whiteboard. But because I'm traveling all the time, 99 times out of 100, I'm never in someone's office doing the whiteboarding session. It's done by webinar. We send them a link. I'm in some hotel in Kansas City. They're in their office. Now, in your world, more than likely, you're going to be able to whiteboard them in their conference room or your conference room. They might have a partner, though, that is in another city. Make sure that you want to Zoom them in to the whiteboarding session in the client's office in which you're in the town in which you live. Y'all follow that? Never, ever do a whiteboarding session unless it's done by webinar. And the reason is if you do it strictly by conference call, and you now say, share with me the items on the list that are most important to you in order of priority, and there was not a whiteboard, guess what they're going to say? Heck, Mike, I don't remember what I told you. Or say, which ones, they won't know. That's why you must always have a visual that captures what they tell you is important to them, because the second part of the whiteboarding session is then coming back and saying, look at the list and tell me the order that's most important to you. You got to get the 1, and this is 2, and this is 3. And as we did a couple days ago, we let you have the discussion among yourselves of what's 2, but you want to have 2 2s, and that's fine, and this is number 3. They can't do that if you didn't capture it and they can see it. It won't happen. They won't remember. Then you storyboard the presentation. So I sit down with Jennifer and I'll say, Jennifer, here's what they want. So we obviously know the order of the presentation, but what slides do you think we should use? And so we'll go to old slide decks and old, stuff that we've got, and we just kind of create just rough drafts. I say, let's do something that looks kind of like this, and I'll draw a picture, and sometimes we're working off a flip chart. So then we storyboard it. Then we assign a presenter's responsibility. Well, let me tell you what I mean by that. If it's a team presentation, I'll say, Jordan, let me tell you what. I want you to take the BOV piece because you're really cool with that. Daniel, let me tell you what I want you to get. They really want to understand where rents are going to go in this property. So I want you to talk about rents. I want you to talk about vacancy. I want you to talk about new construction, all right? So Nate, let me tell you what I want you to handle. I want you to talk about, who we think the logical buyer is going to end up being. And so now now I want you to work closely with marketing or BTS brands in doing the slides. Then from there we work with marketing to create a client-centric presentation. Then we do a walkthrough. So now we've assembled all of the slides and we say, let's just do a walkthrough. Houston, do you still like this slide? Let marketing know now if you want to refine it. So we do the walkthrough of the slide deck. Then we do reconnaissance. If we're presenting in the client's conference room, get up out of your office and go over there and take a look. Go see what's going on over there. Find out what kind of AV they have. And matter of fact, if the AV that they have is sketchy, bring your projector. Bring your projector that has been in the storeroom for 10 years. That is your spare tire. Because I will tell you, the technician or the IT person will be sick that day when you show up. It'll be missing an HDMI cable, You can't connect. I'm just telling you all the things that go wrong, do go wrong. And now you've got this gorgeous presentation that's on PowerPoint that no one's going to see except if they look over your shoulder on your laptop, and that ain't cool. So just bring that spare tire, and you'll use it like once every 10 times that you cannot connect to either their projector or to their flat screen. Got it? Forward the agenda, and we'll talk about this, 3 days before you present. I'm amazed at the number of people that present and they don't ever use an agenda. They just show up. Big listing presentation, big tenant rep presentation, and I just appear. So you want to make sure you tell them 3 or 4 days in advance, Jordan, here's what we're going to cover. Is there anything you want to add? We'll talk about that in detail in a little bit. Then you do a dress rehearsal. If it's a monster presentation, this is where we do a lot of our consulting, you actually time the presentation the day before. If they said you've got an hour, you practice it, you've got the clock on, you should videotape it too so you can take a look at what it looks like, and that's the real deal. Then from there, you do a meet the team brochure. I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. Then you design the showstoppers. I'll show you those in a few minutes. Then you prepare an elevator presentation as a fallback. Let me tell you what the elevator presentation is. About 20% of the time that you present, when you get in the room, they're going to tell you they've run out of time. They're going to say, we are so sorry. And give us your deck, and I promise we're going to take a look at it. But if you could, just tell me what you got to tell us in 15 minutes. You better be prepared for that, because it's going to happen. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen. We'll talk about that. Then presentations that win, which I'm going to get into in 1 minute. And then following the presentation, whatever was in your executive summary, which we'll talk about in just a second, the day of the presentation, you do a handwritten note and say, David, we really appreciate the time you and your colleagues gave us today. We're confident that we covered when is the best time to go to the marketplace, who the logical buyer is going to be. We gave you our process that's going to get you the best possible price, and we've also given you some best practices that it won't be retraded at the 11th hour. We look forward to moving forward with you as soon as possible, something like that. And that's a handwritten note. As my dear friend Rod Knowles mentioned yesterday, there's nothing like a handwritten note, correct? So that's the yellow brick road. Any questions on this process? All right.
Mike, what's a good, I mean, for presentations, like time-wise, you want to keep it to like 45 minutes, like no more than 10 slides? The other thing is too, you can get like, it's not like we're planning D-Day, you want to keep it concise, correct?
You said how long should it be?
Yeah, like how many?
Well, so we were hired by your firm, coincidentally, to help them win 2 major opportunities. One was at huge mixed retail across from the Four Seasons in downtown Houston. I think it's the Four Seasons, it's either Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons, that's downtown Houston.
Yes.
It's a big mixed-use project, used to be owned by J.P. Morgan, and so they had to talk retail leasing, they had to talk construction management, they had to talk office leasing. I mean, that's a massive project, all right? That took 2 hours. We helped the team win the GM corporate headquarters, 4 million square feet in downtown Detroit. And so that took 2.5 hours. I mean, so sometimes, based upon the needs analysis, there's a lot to talk about. Then there's other times that it's a 5,000 square foot tenant rep assignment. That can be done in 30 minutes. So I do not know how long the presentation is going to be until I do the needs analysis. But what happens to most presenters, they just talk too much. They just babble. They just go on. They think the more words they put into the presentation, they've increased the likelihood. It is all about being succinct. It is all about zingers. Bang, 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 bang is what you want. You want memorable statements that hang in the air, because if you wash them away with all those words, then you're losing your opportunity. And so I'd always, and the one thing you do not want to do is go over. Somebody gives me an hour, I'm 59 minutes. There are rare occasions I've gone over the last couple of days, but I try to be pretty mindful of the clock. So time is oftentimes a function of what the client's going to give you or what it takes to cover the material. 2 models of presenting. First, the 5-step classic. 9 out of 10 presentations you make will be this. This is your standard listing presentation, tenant rep presentation, property management presentation, corporate service presentation, investment sale. This is where they want a listing. They want you to represent them to find space. And this is where you really don't have a lot of advance notice, maybe 5, 6, 7 days, maybe up to 10 days, all right? The second type of presentation, which takes more time to put together, is known as the 25-75, the yellow pad, the Q&A. I love Seinfeld, so I also call this one the stop and chat. It's where the client says, listen, we've got a very sophisticated audience. The committee knows what they've done. This is not their first rodeo, and they've got a lot of questions. So we don't want you to come in here with a big PowerPoint presentation. We just want you to be prepared to answer a lot of questions. And so the committee is going to sort of, I don't want to call it, say, grill you, but you know, we know who you are. You got a wonderful reputation. But the other two firms we're interviewing, they got a wonderful reputation, and we want to have a yellow pad presentation. And that's what most of your prospects will call it, will be yellow. This is typically reserved for the monsters. This is where someone is selling a portfolio of 9 hotels. I mean, this is serious people that are serious about their business, that have been around, and they're really kind of interviewing you. You know, so, you know, how do you prepare for that? And we're going to show you how to do that in just a little bit, all right? But you might do one of these once a year. This is, if you win this assignment, it really makes your year, because it tends to be packages, it tends to be portfolios, it tends to be the largest, you know, industrial park in the city. That's the kind of stuff it's going to be, and that's the kind of stuff we want to help you win. I want you to remember the 4 C's before I get into the details of the 2 types of presentations. 4 C's, we want you comfortable. We want you concise. We want you to be brief. We want you to be to the point. We want you to be conversational. This is really important. Some of you in your career will make big time presentations, important stuff, and you won't be yourself. You'll come in and you'll stand at attention and you'll deepen your voice. You know, you're like, and I'm thinking, who the hell is that guy? I don't remember working with that person. You know, and then and you become serious. The best presenter is from your natural state, where you just present from whoever you might be, from your personality. And so we want to make sure that it's conversational. We want it to be prepared, but we don't want it to sound like it's scripted, because what happens if you script it, then you're so concerned about have I memorized it. And if you drop a line, then you freak out in front of the prospect, and it gets sideways on you. So if you just remember what are the key points, and you go from stepping stone to stepping stone. I think Rod Knowles left his note cards behind. But pick them up. Now understand, Rod has been a senior CCIM instructor for 25 years. But he is serious about getting in front of a group of people. And so that was his stuff. Now, he could have done it without the cards, because how often did you see him look at the cards? I noticed yesterday, the first 9 minutes, he looked at 2 or 3 cards, and then he did not look at a card again, because he had set sail. And oftentimes, once you set sail, you're in the zone. But you got to be able to get in the zone. And you want to get in the zone as soon as you possibly can, because it's more enjoyable for the audience. And so that's why you want to make sure it's conversational and not scripted, because it's darn near impossible to get in the zone if it's scripted. It just doesn't happen. But if it's your personality and it's conversational, it tends to happen. Next, confidence. And this just comes from practice. And when you all hire our little firm to help you prepare for a big presentation, we practice over and over and over again until I feel like, yeah, you're coming across as confident, you're coming across as conversational, you really appear to be comfortable now. That doesn't just naturally happen on the first outing. You know, as you've heard so many times before, you know, repetition is the mother of skill. You know, that's where confidence comes from. Runs clear, we've talked about. Jennifer, what have you done? Oh, I shouldn't say what have you done. Where are the two models of presentations? Where are they? This is a brand new deck. They're gone. This whole deck has been completely relocated. Nope. Come up here and find them. I'll tell you what they are. Write this down. Step 1 is you begin with a client-centric executive summary. Now, this is on the 5-step classic. If not, I'll just launch one of my old decks.
It's on here. It's there. I saw it.
It's supposed to be slide 3.
Here's your 5-step classic.
Oh, okay. Look at that. That is, I've never seen that before. That's different.
Mike, thank God for Jennifer.
Well, that's. Now you're gonna edit this. You're gonna edit it.
It'll be out.
You don't. Should Jennifer edit that out? Hell no. I love it that, and we're doing this, Tim, on presentations. Isn't that great?
I love irony.
So first step is client-centric statement. To get the contents for the client-centric statement, you ask the money question. Y'all forgot probably from 2 days ago the money question. I've won more assignments with this one question. Daniel, if you would, share with me the 3 or 4 most important objectives that you have as it relates to awarding us this assignment. That's, well, no, you don't. That was being rhetorical. That's the money question. And when the client says, Mike, we need to improve employee productivity, we need to get closer to our customers, we want to find a way to reduce our cost of occupancy by 10%, and we really would like to have a facility that helps us recruit and retain better, that's what we would like to accomplish in this upcoming relocation. I said, that's awesome. I said, now if you would, give me the order of priority. And it could be retain, it could be reduce cost of occupancy, whatever it is. And that now is the order 1, 2, 3, 4. Now watch. When they give me the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, the client-centric executive summary, which is slide 2, is organized 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 1. The second most important item goes first. The lesser important items get sandwiched in the middle. And the last item that I'm on a major presentation, or one that's really even not major, is the last item, is number 1. Do not use books. The client gets ahead of you with a book. How many times have you handed out books to 3 different people? It's an investment sale presentation. Page 10 is where you got the BOV. Nate, you're nodding because you know exactly what happens, don't you? You haven't opened your mouth. You've handed out your books, and one of the grumpy ones goes to page 9, and they see your BOV, and they say, $7 million, and you'll notice their body language, what they do is they look at you sideways. $7 million? David, $7 million? Are you serious? Are you for real? You haven't even started yet. The presentation hasn't begun, and they're looking at you sideways, asking you, are you serious? Stop using books. Yes, ma'am.
Do you recommend any type of papers? Like, what about an agenda?
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about agendas in just a little bit. Now, I don't know where it is in the slide deck, but I will find it, all right? We're going to be on like a, what should I say? It's going to be like a, what's the thing that kids go on, you know, where they're looking for something? Scavenger hunt. This is a great deal. I'm thinking about this. I've got a slide deck on presentation that's going to be a scavenger hunt over the next hour or so. So they're in there, I must not have looked at the deck. Think I was prepared? So we will have an agenda. Let's talk about that for a second. I want you to send a draft agenda over to the prospect 3 days before you present. I am amazed at the number of you that are making presentations that there's no agenda. And so you just appear and you say, here's what we're going to cover. They might say, can you add this? Let me tell you what else happens. Oftentimes there's other brokers that will be presenting, and they raise things that they would now like to have included in your presentation since you did the whiteboarding session. Let me tell you one that we see all the time on Tenant Rep: construction management, labor analytics, scattergram capability. So one firm goes in and talks about their scattergram capability. Oh man, you can determine where our employees come from and where the buildings are located. Well, that is really cool. But they never told you that because that happened after you whiteboarded them. The purpose of sending the draft agenda over 3 days in advance is, here's what we're planning on covering. Is there anything else you would like for us to add? 2 other brokers planted seeds about other items. One was on construction management. Another firm talked about scattergrams. And they said, I don't know if it's too late to add this, but there is any way, do you have scattergram capability? And can you also talk about construction management if you have that? And you come back with an email, of course we'll add that to the agenda. We have both those abilities. But if you don't do the draft agenda in advance, not only that, your competitors aren't sending over a draft agenda. So now they're thinking, this is the kind of firm I want to work with. This is the kind of group that I think is pretty doggone cool. 3 days before they sent us a draft agenda, we're able to add to it. 2 positive things have happened. You've created a better mindset in the part of the prospect, and 2, you're better prepared. Because you don't want to find out about scattergrams the day of the presentation. You want to find out about that before. So yes, absolutely there should be an agenda, and that agenda will be included in what we call the placemat or playbill, and I'll share what that looks like in a few minutes. So absolutely we use it agendas. I'm glad you asked that question. Books. We moved to our offices where we're in now 10 years ago. And like most of you, we had this fancy copy room. We had a Canon printer that collated, and we had this GBC machine. We had gorgeous Lipsy covers with little holes in the top that you would put a cover page in behind so you knew who the presentation. So when we moved, we got a bunch of us, and I took the GBC machine with those little dots falling out, and I take it to the dumpster because the local church didn't want it. So I walked to the dumpster and I threw away a good, nice GBC machine, binding, with all the spiral binders, you know those things? We threw those away, all the covers. Haven't missed it one day. We haven't bound a book in 10 years. Everything is digital. Everything is digital. And for those of you that are still making books, I feel so sorry for your marketing people. I mean, you want to talk about people I feel sorry for? Because on Sunday, you're looking at the organization of the book, and either something's not right or something's wrong, and you go full panic, you know, and say, can you meet me tomorrow morning before I go present at 7 o'clock? I got to change some things and rip some. If it was digital, it'd be easy enough to do. Second part of the presentation is what we call situation, all right? And we want to make sure that you demonstrate that this is going to be a client-centric presentation. This is about you. You talk about what you did to learn everything there was about the assignment. We toured the building, we looked at the rent roll, we read the notes and mortgages. You tend to be hired when you appear to be more familiar with the opportunity and the assignment than your competition. Don't you dare, and I think Rod talked about this yesterday, maybe even Tim, don't just talk about drove by the property. I know the property. I've been to the property before. This time we went to the property, we walked the occupied space, we saw the stuff that was just built out, which looks fantastic. I love it when a broker is selling multifamily, and they said we walked several of your units, and I will tell you, what you've done with the stainless steel appliances, the parquet flooring, the fans over the dining room, I thought that was cool. And matter of fact, we're even thinking, and we've got this in our presentation, we're actually thinking with what you've done with the amenities, you should be getting maybe another $10 or $15 per month from the ones and $20 to $25 a month in the twos. And we're going to make sure we point those items out when we bring investors by. That's what they want to hear, that when you toured the property, that you're making a listing presentation on, whether it's either for sale or for lease, that you've thought about how you're going to sell that property or lease that property. You do a tour in back of the facility, and the building engineer shows you the new Johnson control system that was installed. And you say, listen, we were really impressed with Roger. He is a knowledgeable building engineer, but more importantly, he pointed out the software and hardware that you installed last year. That makes a huge difference in the savings. And the relighting that you did throughout the common area, that is a huge cost savings, and it's wonderful that you've done that now because that's really going to reduce the cost of occupancy to the tenants. And we've thought about how we're going to present that on the tour. Are you with me? It's in the presentation that you tell them, we know this property. We know this property, and we've thought about how we're going to sell this property. We've thought about how we're going to lease this property. It just drives me crazy. A broker's making a presentation and says, yeah, I know the property. I've driven by the property, and you're using a book that it's obvious that all it is just sort of a duplication from the last listing presentation that you made. 3, then the presentation is organized 2, 3, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. The one thing you have to remember is you're going to start off with the second most important item first, and then the last item is going to be the most important item, and then you sandwiched everything in between. Some of you are starting with the most important items first. I mentioned this whatever day it was, Wednesday, and what happens is the presentation just gets watered down from there. Because now what you've done is you said, let's go to the movie, but let's look at the end first. I've got a great book I'm going to recommend to you, but I'm going to read the last 2 pages. That's what you're doing when you give them the most important item first. You haven't laid the groundwork, and just really from a practical standpoint, are you going to trial close on number 1, if that was the most important item, at the beginning of the presentation? Probably not. Now, let me just say this. There are times that you'll be on a point that is so important to the prospect that you can close at that time. Next, tell a story, case study. I love when a broker says, you know what, Jordana, this opportunity reminds me very much of one that we worked on 9 months ago. Almost the same size. They had mezz space on the second floor also. We converted that to office suites, which, by the way, we've leased all that. And so you tell them that you are experienced, but you're telling it sort of in a story. You know, it's interesting how many very successful brokers always come to me and say, Mike, I want to be a better storyteller. I want to be able to be a better storyteller. And that is important, but it really is similar situations is what you're doing. You're saying, here's a similar situation that we worked on. You know, we represented a law firm about 25,000 square feet, not quite 9 months ago. They had many of the same objectives that you had. And then oftentimes the client will say, can you tell me which law firm that was? And if you can share it, you share it. And then you say, here's how we went about the assignment, and we would use a very similar approach. So that's tell a story. And then the way forward, we're going to have a lot of fun with in a couple of hours. That's going to be the variety of closing techniques that you can use. Got it? So any questions on the 5-step classic? This is the one you're going to use most frequently. The alternative to the book is, of course, going to be PowerPoint. We're going to show you how to use iPads in a presentation, but it's avoiding paper. Now, some of you use these things that are placemats where it looks like where in the world is Waldo, where you've got all the stuff on this thing that looks like this. Some of you even, it gets worse, it gets double-sided. You're so cheap, instead of printing 2 separate ones, you double-side it. So then the second half of your presentation is on the flip side, and all they got to do is just turn it over, and they can see the balance of the presentation. I had a group that I was working with, a multifamily group in Atlanta. I told them, do not use the placemats. They said, we like to use them. I said, well, I can only say so much. But whatever you do, do not put anything on the second page. Keep that in reserve, and when you're ready to get to that part of the presentation, you pull the second sheet out and put it in front of them. Are y'all with me? Of course, they put their BOV on the back side. They didn't listen to me on the back side. The clients come in, and of course, they're inquisitive. Guess what they did before the presentation started? They flipped over the thing, and guess what was on the flip side? The BOV. And guess what happened? They had a meltdown. What the hell price is this, and where this come from? And you haven't even started yet. So the only way to truly keep the most important items in a place that they can't see them until you're ready for them to see them is digitally. Either using Conference Pad on an iPad or using PowerPoint or Prezi or something along those lines. Questions? Questions? Come, yeah. Yeah.
What's 231 again?
231 is what I heard when I asked the money question. So I said, Paul, can you share with us, as it relates to us listing this property for you, what are the 3 or 4 most important items that you want us to cover in our listing presentation? And let's say it's one for lease. How are you going to get me to 90% by the end of the year? How can you minimize any tenant improvement I got to do? How can you make sure you negotiate 5-year leases? So they tell me, all right?
Find out when you ask the money question.
And then but you got to come back with part 2 of the money question. If you would now tell me the order of priority of those 4 items that you've just given me. And they say getting to 90% by the end of the year is number 1. Achieving rents of $35 a square foot would be number 2. Minimizing tenant improvement allowance would be number 3. And getting me 5-year leases would be number 4.
That's how you would order your thing.
That's, to me, right there. And that's why I want, if you're using a marketing, they should be listening also with you. Right there, here's what I see. Slide 1 is the gathering slide. That is a slide that is nothing more than a picture of their building. Slide 2 is not a table of contents. This is not an academic 3-hour course we're doing. It's a sales presentation. Slide 2 is an executive summary that is organized 2, 3, 4, 1. 2 of the most important questions you can ask in preparing for an important presentation is, what are the most important items you want us to cover? You get them. Now give me the order of priority. And the thousands of times, no exaggeration, that I've asked those 2 questions, no one has ever said, Mike, I'm not going to tell you, or 2, I'm not going to tell you my order of priority. That has never happened. And when they tell you that, you have now got the following. Slide 2, which is the order and the 2, 3, 4, 1 of what's going to be covered. The second thing I see is the actual order of my slides in the deck. 2, I got to talk about a plan to get them to 90%. 3, I got to talk about rental rates that we'll achieve. 4, I'll talk about what we'll do in the negotiate. You with me? In the negotiate. I just see the body of the presentation. And then the last slide in the deck, guess what that is? That is a classic summary close. It is organized 2, 3, 4, 1. I've got 2 minutes left on my presentation. I'll say I am confident that the team has covered the 4 most important items that you want us to address. We started off talking about how we were going to get you to 90% by the end of the year. Let's say that was number 2. And then we went into number 3, number 4. And we're also confident that we really clearly talked about your most important item is how we negotiate deals that get you $35 a square foot, if not more. And because we've been so thorough in covering everything that was important to you, wouldn't you agree that we should move forward together on the 1st of July? The money question gives you 3 parts of a winning presentation. Slide 2, not the table of contents, but the executive summary. It gives you the body of the presentation in its logical order, 2, 3, 4, 1. And it gives you the last slide in the deck, which is your way forward close. It's how we should move forward together. If I can get you to just ask those 2 questions, but then create a presentation that adheres to what you heard from the client, you will start developing client-centric presentations. But I will tell you, because no one in this room comes close to looking at as many presentations I look at from as many different firms. Page 2 is a table of contents with our platform, competitive set, our experience, an org chart. I mean, you could literally give me your presentation, but take off your company's logo, and you say, what firm are we with? I don't know. And you could easily slap on someone else's logo, and they would think that presentation was created for them. That's how similar they are. If you only knew how awful and how similar presentations are, you would not believe it. That's how bad they are. And because to start off with, I'm pissed off because it's broker-centric. I look at page 2, I don't need to go any further. I know what's about ready to happen. The broker is going to carry on about their experience and their platform and what they did back in 1989, and here we go again. And the client's thinking, will they ever talk about the 4 most important items that I have? They never think of that consciously because they don't know that that is even a possibility. Are you all with me? So Paul, your question is a great question. You get the money question down, and then the part 2 to that, give me the order of priority. Yes, Tanner.
So, speaking on page 2, the executive summary, what should that look like?
Oh, I thought you took my bottle of water. What should page 2 look like?
What should be on that executive summary?
I'm going to tell you exactly. You ready?
I'm ready.
So page 2 at the top, it has a date maybe and it has executive summary. And then there's nothing on that page, on the PowerPoint slide. You with me? But then a team member hits the space bar. And then it builds across, transitions across the top, achieving 90% occupancy by 12/31/2022 appears with a little dot right there. And so I start off by saying, you told us there were 4 items that you wanted us to address today. One was you wanted us to achieve 90% between now and the end of the year. And as I say that, my team member hits the space bar, and that comes across the screen. Can you visualize this? And then I said, in addition to that, you wanted to make sure that we negotiate leases that were at least 5 years so it would make it easier for you to sell the property for the best possible price or get the best possible financing. And as I see that, the next dot appears and that bill's across the screen. How am I doing so far? Okay, stay with me. Yes, ma'am, I'll get beat there. So then I say, and then the third thing you wanted us to make sure that we minimize the TI in our negotiation because you want to watch your capital. And that bill's across the screen. And then finally, you said the most important item that you want us to address today is getting rents of $35 a square foot, if not greater, because that's what you promised your lender. And that bill's across the screen. That's all that's on that screen. But the only thing that's on there when you start is executive summary. There's only 2 slides that need to be build or transition slides. That's slide 2 and the last slide in the deck. And they're essentially mirror images of one another, but with the last slide being an embellished slide 2. So the last slide in the deck is an embellished slide 2, because now you've gone through the presentation and you've told them everything that was important to them, but guess what? You haven't closed yet. So now it's 45 minutes later and I say, Tanner, we're confident we have covered the 4 most important items you want us to address. And so we gave you a plan of 90%, but if you remember in that part of the presentation, and we talked about accountability, that you were going to have access to our share file and you were going to see when we were doing tours and when we generated proposals. He didn't know that in the executive summary. But the client, she now knows that now, right? So now I can embellish that last slide as I'm building each one of those bullet points. Simplicity is better. Matter of fact, all of you remember the 5x5 rule. Ideally, it's better not to have more than 5 bullet points on any one slide. And try to keep the wording down to 5 to 7 to 8 words per bullet point. So that gives you potentially in a total of 40 words per slide, right? If you go, 5 by 8. Now watch carefully. Some of you are bringing slides that look like they're pages torn out of a book. What are you going to read to them? Is this bedtime? I mean, what the hell is, you've taken stuff from the Chamber of Commerce and you've made a copy of it and you stuck it in a PowerPoint presentation? Are you that lazy that you can't, have you not interviewed the client that you can punch? Those bullet points are punches, aren't they? But can you imagine if I covered that whole page with text? There's no punch, there's no magic.
It's too much.
It is too much.
Yeah.
I look at some slides and says, I'm not going to read that. I'm not taking the time. Why didn't you, figure out a succinct way to make this presentation?
You can also get lost in the presentation if you have too much text. At least from my
Not in the presentations we help you create. Yes, ma'am. You had a question?
Yes. On an apartment building or retail building, what kind of a question do you ask or give them the objection to say, well, these are important to me? What would you say?
Why does it matter the product? It's one question. It doesn't matter whether if it's assisted living, student housing, multifamily. What's the 4 or 5 most important items you want me to address? It has nothing to do with product. It's a powerful question, and they will keep it within the context of their product. If I ask someone that's in student housing, what's the 4 or 5 most important items, they'll have an answer related to their situation. If I ask someone that's got retail, someone that's got an industrial park, they'll know how to answer it. It's the question. It doesn't have to be, there's not a particular question for each product type. What's the 4 or 5 most important items that you want me to address in my upcoming presentation? They'll tell you, and then the next question is, give me the order of priority. All right.
The last, do you send it by email? Do you send it on conversation?
Send what by email?
The question.
Hell no. Send it by email.
Just ask.
No. 1% of the time might be by email. But it's either, ideally, it's eyeball to eyeball. That's my first preference. Second preference is webinar. All right? Third is phone call. Fourth is email. But email, it would be the last resort where I'd say, Damaris, if you would, please tell me the 4 or 5 things that are most important that you would like for me to present to your committee next week. That's last. That might happen 1 out of 100 times. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be either eyeball to eyeball or webinar. 2 out of 10 might be phone. 1 out of 10. So 70% of the time, it's going to be they see me and I see them. We want you to do runs clear, and we want you to do a whiteboarding session. Sometimes maybe it won't happen. I can't imagine why. But you can at least ask two questions. What's most important to you, and what's the order of priority? If I could get y'all to just do those two questions, your win rate goes off the chart, because now you're able to develop a client-centric presentation. Next. Now comes, and up until this Lipsy school, because Jennifer, we changed this 2 weeks ago. It used to be 50-50. So this used to be called the 50-50 presentation. And let me tell you what would happen. I'm helping a team in New York going after a monster opportunity. And the client calls the broker and says, we've decided we do not want your traditional listing presentation. We want a yellow pad presentation. So the broker said, oh yeah, we'll do a yellow pad presentation. So they pick up the phone and call me. Said, Mike, I just got off the phone with the client. They want a yellow pad presentation. What do you think that is? It was 2010. I still can remember the phone call. I said, I think I know what they want. I think they want maybe to have more of a conversation, but you need to call them back and clarify. So they called them back and they said, listen, we respect your firm, but we also respect the other two firms that are presenting. And all of you are qualified with a wonderful reputation. Our committee does not know you, and they do not know your team members. So here's what we want. We've got a lot of questions for you. We want you to come in, and we've got a bunch of questions for you. That is now what's called the 50-50. And so in a 50-50 presentation, half of the presentation we envision to be statistical. How many buildings could accommodate a 20,000 square foot tenant? How many properties have sold and at what cap rates? It's just facts. The other half is, what should we do at that second floor meta space that we've never been able to lease? Should we upgrade our landscaping at the apartment complex? And if we did, what would happen to rents? Are you with me? So it's where they want to have a conversation with you, where they want insight. But guess what we found? And the reason we now call it 25-75, of the clock, where did we end up spending 25% of the time? Yeah, in the statistical. It didn't take long to say there's 3 buildings that would accommodate a 20,000 square foot tenant in the submarket that you like. Where the bulk of the time was being spent was in the part of the presentation which was going to be the discussion, which is dangerous because you better know what they want to ask you about, because you want to make sure you have slides that are prepared for that. Got it? Situation, very similar. The one thing that is different, though, is going to be, yes, sir.
So still you're going to do the whiteboarding for the yellow pad? Or I don't think.
I'm sorry, say again now?
Will there be any whiteboarding in such yellow pad?
Oh.
Of course.
More so for this than the classic. I hope, let me repeat the question. Mike, is there going to be any whiteboarding for this? Absolutely, because here's what I want you to envision. I call the client and say, listen, what you want is a presentation we call a 25-75. We sometimes call it the yellow pad or Q&A. They said, that sounds about right. I said, we absolutely need to set a whiteboarding session so that we can be prepared. What's a whiteboarding session? And I tell them, it's nothing more than 20 minutes, come by your office and ask you a bunch of questions. He said, Mike, we're busy over here. Those who will be in attendance in the presentation, only a couple will be able to attend. I said, that's fantastic. Rarely will you be able to get everyone in attendance in the whiteboarding session. Stay with me, this is really important. So I get the 2 people of the 5 that'll be listening, and I'll say, share with us everything that's important to you. And just like we did a couple days ago, the list gets developed. And no one is better than whiteboarding than Jennifer. You got it? And so now we're taking notes, we're taking notes, we're taking notes. Some of the items are how many buildings will accommodate 20,000 square feet, what amenities do we need to improve employee productivity. There might also be a bullet point in there, should we go open plan or closed plan? We got a bunch of different samples of actual whiteboarding sessions, one for tenant rep, one for landlord rep, and one for investment sale. And so you look at the items and you say, you know, you ask us to put together a yellow pad presentation. When we organize that presentation, some of the items go into the statistical part. It's just the facts. We'll tell you there's 3 buildings that will accommodate 20,000 square feet, but then you've also asked us, should we go open plan or closed plan? That's a discussion, because we'll talk about the costs and the benefits of both, and that takes some time. So as we go through this list, first start telling me those items that you would like to see in the first part of the presentation, which we call the factual part or the statistical part. You got it? And they start telling me, and I go S, 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 and then I'll say, now tell me the items that you want in the discussion or the yellow pad part of the presentation. Well, should we go open plan or closed plan? What amenities improve productivity? And now I start putting the Y next to those items. Can you visualize that? Now I go back and say, give me the order of importance on the statistical items. And now there's S1, S2, S3. And then I'll say, give me the order of importance for the yellow pad items. And now it's Y1, Y2, Y3. Once I have that, now I have something that is similar to slide 2 in the classic presentation, but because this is the yellow pad presentation, my executive summary has 2 parts. Those items which will be in the statistical part, 2, 3, 1, transition to the yellow pad, 2, 3, 1. Y'all with me? So now I go S2, S3, S1, transition, Y2, Y3, Y1. That now becomes the executive summary for the yellow pad presentation. The last slide in the deck is organized S2, S3, S1, Y2, Y3, drum roll, 4 minutes left. What's the last item I'm going to cover? Y1. You all with me? That is the big difference. The executive summary, and so now I've got really 2 parts of the presentation, the body of the presentation, that are S2, S3, S1, transition to yellow pad, Y2, Y3, Y1.
Mike?
Yes?
Can you send us a sample of a real yellow pad presentation?
There should be the whiteboarding stuff in the deck, isn't there? Y'all saw my wife briefly yesterday, Lottie. Y'all know her background. She was director of education for the Apartment Association. That's how we met 50 years ago. And we've been married, I think, 44, 45 years now. And she, as a middle school, went to see the Beatles with her Aunt Pat. We saw the Beatles in New Orleans at Memorial Stadium. She took a friend, I don't remember the friend's name, and she talks about that all the time. She loves the Beatles. Matter of fact, I think Paul McCartney just celebrated his 80th birthday in Boston. I think it was Boston. But anyway, she loves the Beatles. And I used to do a lot of work in the UK, and Lottie would travel with me during the summer when I was doing my summer work over there. And for her birthday, which is in August, I had bought tickets to Let It Be. You know, it's the play that these 4 guys who look just like the Beatles and sound just like the Beatles do this entire show. And they go from the beginning of the Beatles music to the end. That's the play. And their dress changes as the way the Beatles changed their dress, you know, and there were however many years they were together. Pretty cool. And she didn't know. So I took her to dinner, and I said, I got a surprise for your birthday that we're going to do now. And she said, what's that? I said, we're going to go to a play. And we love going to plays, not only just in New York, but also in London. And so we get a cab from the restaurant. We're going up to the play, and it'll come to me. It's this old theater that's been renovated. It's gorgeous. And we pull up, and of course, they've got the things in front of them, Let It Be. I thought I did pretty good. I was kind of pleased with myself, you know. I can be a slug a lot, but this was one of my better days. I've had some bad days in 44 years, but this was pretty good. So she's jacked up. And we had seats where I always like to sit. I always like to sit on the end. I am not sitting in the middle. In case of fire or whatever, I want to sit, you know, right where you're sitting, okay? So I'm sitting on the end, and the play was fantastic. And of course, they get a standing ovation, right? They get a standing ovation at the end. And she looks at me and says, this has been fantastic. I guess it's time to go. I said, I don't think so. She says, they've left the stage and everyone's standing with a standing ovation. I said, they maybe left the stage and everyone might be giving them a standing ovation, but they have not sung Let It Be yet. And I'm thinking if the name of the play is Let It Be, at some point in time, we're going to hear that song. So sure enough, guess what happened? After the standing ovation, they come back, they get their equipment again, and sing Let It Be. And now people go crazy. Now they've lost their mind. You thought they lost their mind when they're standing ovation. Now they've completely lost their mind. You got it? You know what that is? That's why one. That's why one. You know, they didn't start the play with Let It Be. You had to sit through 2 hours of great music to get to Let It Be. And it's the same thing with a great presentation. It is going to be great. It's not just why one that carries the day. It's what you do that leads up to why one that makes them go, we got to hire you. So I don't want you to think for 1 second that, Mike, you're making me keep my dry powder why one to the very end because they've told me that's the most important item. Every item they've told you is important. Some are just a little bit more important than others. But you want to sing Let It Be at the end, not at the beginning or the middle, because it gets a better response in the right place. So to do a yellow pad presentation right, whoo-hoo, that takes real work. That takes interviewing and organization. And now it's not a classic, which is 2, 3, 4, 1. Now it's S2, S3, S1, transition Y2, Y3, Y1. And then you have to decide which team member is the best person to do Y1, who's the best one to do S2. I mean, that takes some time, doesn't it?
Mike, I missed the S and Y.
Yeah.
What is the S and
All right, so when I ask the client, you want us to do a yellow pad presentation, some items we can get to quickly because it's statistical or factual. We'll call those S's. Those are how much are rents, how much TI will you get, and how much vacancies in the marketplace. But then you also want us to talk about open plan versus closed plan. That's a yellow pad item. That's a discussion item. So an S is nothing more than something we can get to quickly. The marketplace is 6% vacant. 4 buildings will accommodate a 20,000 square foot tenant. I don't need to have a big discussion. But the yellow pad item. So that signifies to them placement in a presentation. And when I send over, Jamie, the draft agenda, I don't have S1, S3 anywhere. That stuff disappears when I circulate the whiteboard. So when Jennifer sends over the whiteboard to the client, she doesn't have S or Y or anything like that on the thing. You got it? It's just clean. All right? Now I'm going to show you this in a minute. If there's items that you want to add to the presentation, you add those to the agenda. And they're sandwiched in between because you always want to make sure that Y1 is last, or in a 5-step classic, number 1 is last. You don't want to be closing on your construction management ability. You got it? So you're able to add items that you want to cover in the presentation, but they should be shared with the prospect, not the day of the presentation. They don't want to be surprised with people that you add at the last minute. So let them know 3 days in advance that you're going to discuss construction management. They can tell you, we don't want to have it. Or they might say, we're delighted that you're adding it to the presentation. So we'll show you examples of agendas in just a few minutes. Other questions on the difference between the yellow pad and the 5-step classic. Now understand, the organization of the yellow pad is going to be the body, S2, S3, S1, transition, Y2, Y3, Y1. So a little different organization in a yellow pad presentation versus a classic. And you're going to know, sometimes I've even asked clients, there's 2 ways that we can present to you and your committee next week, or to you and your partner. We can do a classic presentation where you tell us what's important and we'll cover it, or 2, we can have a conversation with you and your partner. Which would you prefer to have? He said, Mike, we're serious people. We've been doing this for a long time. We don't need a broker presentation. We'd rather have a conversation with you. But you need to be prepared to have this conversation. So I'd say, Abraham, let me just ask you, let's talk about the items that you would like for us to discuss. See, when you're in a yellow pad presentation and you're in the question part, it morphs. And you need to anticipate the morph. Let me give you an example of a morph. They want us to come up with a solution for the second floor that they've not been able to lease because it's mezz space, but it could be office space. And our recommendation is going to be office suites. Anywhere from 12 to 1,500 square feet, we can get 8 of them up there. Build them out one time, get better than market rents, no TI required. All right? When I make that recommendation, I can tell you what they're going to ask me. Have you ever done this before? Where did you do it? what are the rents that you're getting and what's the occupancy? I can just tell you, any landlord that is half a nitwit is going to say, I got some questions about that. You're telling me to spend money to build this space out, and where have you ever done this before? Where did you do it? What's the occupancy and what kind of rents are you getting, right? So David says, Mike, I'm a little skeptical about spending all that money on that second floor. Have you ever done this before? Yes, I have. Matter of fact, let me show you something. We're glad that you've asked that question. So now I bounce from the yellow pad portion of the presentation to the morph portion, which are the slides that I have in my slide deck, which are only on my computer, which are in the back end of my slide deck. And when I print out my slides, I print 3 to the page with little notes if I'm making a presentation, so I know where every slide is. And as you know, PowerPoint finally, after all these years, have numbered the slides. And I know to put in 52, enter, and it jumps to slide 52. It's a photograph of a before and after of a building that we worked on 9 months ago that had very similar tough space that got converted to office suites. We then show them the space that's built out. We now show that all bays have been leased, and we say that the market rents in that area is $32 a square foot. We're getting $35 a square foot on these office suite leases. That's the morph. Listen carefully. When you distribute the deck to the prospect, do not include the slides you held back in reserve for the morph, because some in there might be about conflict of interest and would you reduce your fee. So these are slides you just saying, when I travel in the winter through North Dakota, I carry all kinds of things with me and even some 550 cord just to be prepared. But if you don't need it, you don't need to show it, right? Right? And so, but I got it, because I've seen brokers distribute the deck and they call you and say, Daniel, what's this about a conflict of interest? You didn't address that. You go, so don't ever raise the objection, but you need to make sure that morph portion is only kept if you need it. Got it? Listen, if you're halfway good, you're going to know what questions they're going to ask, particularly when you're in the yellow pad. So there's 2 parts to the yellow pad. One is the preparation of what they've asked you to be prepared for, and 2 is how they kind of go off on a tangent wanting to know more. Are you prepared for that too? Yes, sir.
What if we're in a situation where we've seen it done before and it was successful by some other firm or some other property, but we personally have not been a part of that? How do you overcome that?
Great question. So Houston asked a great question. So they say, Mike, where have you done this? Say, let me tell you a perfect example of this. 1010 Main Street. 18 months ago, they took their second floor, which had been vacant, I bet you, at least 3 years. Because it was just a weird flow. So the landlord went in there, and here's what they did. And I showed the photograph. And here's what it looks now. Whenever we bring a tenant over there, I'm telling you, they've got to pay $2 more than if we took them to the 3rd floor and higher, because it's ready to go right now. And the lease that they're using, which is what we're going to recommend that you do, is not the 35-page lease. There's a particular office suite lease, which is more intense than a Regis lease, but less intense than a 35 traditional. It's a 9-page lease. And we're going to show you that in just a little bit. But that's our recommendation. You'll get more rents. You'll never have to do TI again. Yep, you're going to do the TI once. But the good news is you get higher than market rents and never do TI again. It's going to be the most profitable space in the building. So I would absolutely, if I don't have that particular experience, and there have been times, until we got many of our other landlords to do it, we did a project on 233 North Michigan. Who's from Michigan here? Oh, John stepped out. So we were in Dallas, Texas recommending it, and they said, where have you done this before? Chicago. It wasn't Las Colinas, it was Chicago. So sometimes you just have to give them a case study that oftentimes isn't in their city or even in their state. Good question. How are we doing so far? Then we get into the body of the presentation. The S's first, then the Y's, and then guess what? The last slide in the deck is the way forward slide, just like in the 5-step classic. And what we do, but it's organized a little differently than the classic, it's going to be S2, S3, S1, transition, Y2, Y3, Y1, Y1 is my let it be. I get there, we close, and then I ask my closing question. Abraham, wouldn't you agree that we have been so thorough in covering what's most important to you and answering all the questions that you have that we should all move forward together on the 1st of July? That's what happens.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
We would, matter of fact, we want you to ask. Matter of fact, I want you to be pushy at the end. They're hiring a broker, a tenant rep broker, to fight for them against tough landlords. Right? They're not looking for, someone that's soft.
Timidity and fear.
I mean, they're looking for a guy that, or a gal, that takes it to the line which we call obnoxious, and then comes back about a half inch. That's where we need you. All right? Just take it right to obnoxious, and then get back right, just a tad. That's who they want to hire. Landlord rep, you're the defender. The tenant reps can be the toughest people in the business, right? You're selling an investment property. You think these people that are going to buy your investment property are not going to rough you up? Come on now. You better hire a broker that's going to protect your interests and make sure you don't get retraded at the 11th hour, you don't get jerked around. I mean, that takes a knowledgeable, tough broker. And you need to demonstrate that in the presentation. Now, you don't want to go over the top and be outrageous, but you do want to demonstrate you're a confident, knowledgeable broker. All right, questions? So here's examples of whiteboarding sessions, all right? Done by Zoom, done by webinar. You see the S's, you see the Y's. Here's a whiteboard session that we helped a client do, broker do, in Seattle. The property was developed by Hal, H-A-L, right? Hal? And it was called the Sky Apartments, gorgeous. Gorgeous apartments in Seattle. And unfortunately, there's many cities that are now making developers put retail on the ground floor, which for most is a disaster, right? Now, we have seen a couple of cool developers get a variance by going to whoever, zoning, and saying, I know you want retail on the ground floor. How about, can I take that retail and make the back half an efficiency apartment now that I've not been able to lease it? They said, we don't like it, but as long as the storefront's still retail, we'll let you do that. So now you bust a door in the back for an efficiency apartment. Can you see that? 600 square feet. And now you got 600 square feet of retail in the front. Those things go like that. That the person that owns a little accounting business or beauty salon or whatever in the front lives in the back. And they get access, not from the front from their home, but from the back. It's cool as can be. And the first time I saw that was Austin, Texas, is where Austin wanted you to have multifamily, retail on the ground floor, but they didn't lease it. And if they did lease it, it stayed leased for 15 minutes. And they were coming and going, it was like a revolving door. So this guy in Seattle was having the same problem. So the broker says, can you tell me everything that you want me to cover? And they were going with the classic, not the yellow pad. What should we do about the ground floor retail? It should say 2022. Cap rate expectations between now and the end of the year. Best time to go to the market. So he gave them the laundry list. And then, as they've been properly trained, part 2 is give me the order of priority. Well, the single most important thing is, how are you going to get me the best price? What's the process that you use? I got 2 number 2s. Best time to go to the market, and what's the timeline from when you start? As soon as this is finished, you see the executive summary, slide 2, you see the organization of the presentation, and you see the last slide in the deck. You got money in the bank. You've got this listing because you're the only one that's going to have the ability to make a client-centric presentation. And what you did is you sent this over to the client an hour after you did the whiteboard, but in this case, Jennifer would have taken off all these numbers so they never see those again. And all you do is say, we really enjoyed today's whiteboarding session. We learned a lot. Is there anything you want to add to the list? So you do not show them the numbers ever again. That's just for you and your team to organize the presentation. How cool is that? Here is an example of an agenda. Jamie, this is for you. Okay. So this is a draft agenda that I would send over to a client 3 days before the presentation. Tenant rep. They told me they wanted me to talk about distance between office, home, and clients, obvious a scattergram discussion. With recent events, what are the rents and concessions with all the changes we've seen? Best practices for social distancing, and should they go open plan or closed plan? They never mentioned to me that they want to talk about construction management or lease first own, but I think those are two items that I want to add. You got it? So in my agenda, I let them know that I would like to discuss those. So I send a draft agenda over, which is emailed, saying here are the things that you want to discuss, and there's two items that we want to add. And so now they know in advance, here's what's going to be covered. Yes, sir.
That number 4 on client subject items, is that the number 1 in white?
Well, I want you to know that when this is sent to them, this isn't on there, that's not on there, and the numbers aren't on there. It's just the bullet points.
But the way that you ordered it, is it the same?
Oh, no. If I understand the question, if the question was, is this the order of the actual agenda? The answer is no. I just wanted to segregate the broker stuff from the client stuff. That the stuff that's in the yellow, that's what the client said they wanted. So I would organize the agenda where I would sandwich those things, maybe 3 or 4, because I certainly don't want to be closing on lease first own, which is something they never even discussed, but it's something that they should consider. Write this down. We want you to touch the client 5 times before the day of the presentation. Touch point 1 is runs clear. That's where you make the determination, do I even want to present? Touch point 2 is the actual whiteboarding session. They've never experienced it. It was a meaningful best practice. Touch point 3 is you then circulate a sanitized whiteboard for them to add to it, or for those who did not attend the whiteboarding session, for them to add items. Do you understand what I mean by that? So not everyone that's in attendance in the whiteboarding session, some extras will be in the actual presentation. So I'll say, Daniel, circulate to those who will be in the presentation but didn't attend the whiteboarding session to see what they would like to add. That's touch point 3. Touch point 4 is where I send over a draft agenda of what's going to be covered, including the broker items that need to be added. We're definitely going to cover the things you told me you want me to cover, but I also have a couple things that I want to discuss. Yes, ma'am.
So in this broker items, say they issue a formal RFP and that's what you're kind of responding to and presenting on. Items like, your team experience, who would the team be, things like that. Would you include that in the broker section?
Well, first let's talk about RFPs. The majority of RFPs that I've seen have been developed by an academic. It's mechanics. And the hundreds of times that we've seen our broker teams get an RFP that have asked the question, in addition to the RFP, what are the other items that are important to you? It's amazing the answer to that question are not anywhere near the RFP. Are y'all with me? Like the academic never asked, in addition to this bullshit that we're going to make everybody do, which is ridiculous, what really is important to you? It seems like that question never gets asked. That's why whoever asked me by email, who asked me ever, that there might be an occasion that you get this RFP and now they want to distance themselves and no, we want to sanitize this thing. Then you send an email, we appreciate the RFP, we'll adhere to it. In addition to that, philosophically, what are some of the other items that are important to you? So you find skillfully what really is important. Now, on a number of occasions, I've had RFP prospects say, Mike, if you ask me other questions, I will have to share those questions with your competitor. I'll say, that's cool, because I'm thinking they don't know, the broker wouldn't know what to do with them anyway. You know, you follow what I'm saying? I mean, I'm telling you what to do with them and you won't do it. And so those who, I'm not worried about the stuff being shared because I'll hear that all the time. Mike, we'll answer those questions, but I want you to know to keep this on an honest, even playing field, you know, we're going to have to share that. Got it? Did I answer the question?
So you would still address those items in the presentation?
You got to.
Yeah.
Oh, if they give me an RFP and say, we want you to include this in your presentation. But you know, sometimes what you can do is you can put a bunch of it in the appendix. So depending on the other stuff that you can have in the presentation, as long as it's in your presentation, you might not have to spend valuable time walking through, you know, how many years you've been in the business and you know, stuff that you're just saying, that can be covered in a biographical sketch or something like that. So it's done, but it's not done in the valuable hour that I've got. It's important that you have confidence to not just think it's full stop when you get an RFP. There's still other there's ways that I've worked with, I tell you, it's really tough for like city governments that are building garages and they're getting proposals from 2 or 3, and they'll say, listen, GSA is tough. Have any of y'all ever worked with GSA? I mean, they want to try to keep it as even playing field as possible.
What was 5?
Oh, 5 is what we call the Meet the Team brochure. So some of you come from relatively small firms and you're competing with large firms. So we want to let them know that you also are Tom Cruise. You ever seen Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible? That he gets this thing when he's climbing a mountain that says, you know, we got this mission for you. And he goes through this book of photographs of who he's going to use on this particular mission. That's what the Meet the Team brochure is. Many of our brokers send this a couple days in advance. Some actually bring it to the presentation. The Meet the Team brochure is you're a boutique firm. You're cool though. There's only 3 of you. You're doing 10 a rep and you want the larger assignments. But you're cool. And the reason you're cool is, guess what? I've got a space planner who is the best place. What city are you from?
Orlando.
So I got the best space planner, and in my Meet the Team brochure, I've got your photograph doing a layout. And then they also want to make sure that we have an analyst that can really crunch some numbers, but I don't have an analyst on staff, but I've got the best and you know, the best partner you could possibly have that is my analyst. And then they want a construction management, but I don't have in-house construction management. So the Meet the Team brochure are for those smaller firms that have good relationships with title companies and mortgage bankers and MAIs and environmental engineers that y'all do a lot of business together, and you include it in the Meet the Team brochure. For those of you, and there's many of you that are from JLL and from Cushman and CB and NEI and I don't know who I've left, Colliers that I've left out, guess what? You've got much of it in-house. But you're not bringing them to the presentation because most clients don't want you to bring an army to the presentation. They're not impressed by 9 people with 7 of them not saying one word. I've seen some of you that come from the large companies.
They just need to know that you've got that.
They want to know you got it. And I'm going to tell you why you do it in advance in just a minute. But I've seen some of you making a presentation today. Any of y'all want to go? I got a van, buying coffee afterwards. You don't have to say anything. Just join me. And so you feel like you go in with 3 presidents that don't say anything is going to impress the client. You know what impresses the client? Those people who are closest to the assignment, knowing what they're talking about. The reason the Meet the Team brochure can be sent in advance is oftentimes they'll say, can you actually bring can you bring your analyst to the presentation? It'd be kind of cool. I got some questions for your space planner. Can you bring your space planner to the presentation? So that's why I'd say 7 out of 10 times brokers send it 2 days in advance. So the agenda comes first, but then the Meet the Team brochure comes, you know, not too far from the presentation. Yes, sir.
So you exclude this from the presentation altogether?
Exclude what? Say it, what?
You exclude this from the actual PowerPoint presentation that you present when you go and actually make the pitch?
Are you saying the people that are in the Meet the Team brochure are not in the slide deck? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Great question. The people that are in the Meet the Team brochure that are on the presentation team, they're both places.
Okay.
The environmental engineer, the space planner, all those people that are not present at the presentation, they do not appear in the slide deck. I'm glad you asked the question because I wouldn't have covered this. Tanner is on the team. I'm the senior. I kick it off. Tanner's first time that he speaks is going to be when it comes to open plan versus closed plan. We're fortunate to have Tanner Lee on the team. I mean, no one has researched, particularly today, which is the way to go by firm, open plan versus closed plan. And as I'm saying that, in my deck, there is a detailed biographical sketch of Tanner. All right? When you're on a team, you never want to introduce yourself. That's lame. That's just disgusting. And the reason, you start off presenting, I've been in the business 25, I just can't take it. You always want the team member who went before you to introduce you. It's much more powerful because you're not going to say, you're really fortunate that I'm here today talking about, you know, as obnoxious as you might be, you won't say it. But it's so easy for me to say, listen, we looked a long time around before we found Tanner, and one of the reasons that we knew he was perfect for our team is he understood when space planning and you understood needs analysis, which way to advise a tenant to go closed plan versus open plan, which is one of the most important items that you have. So there's no one better qualified in town to have that discussion, Tanner. And I turn it over to Tanner. So that's how you bridge to a team member. You want nice, smooth transitions. So to answer your great question, I would have his photograph, so he would appear in two places. He would appear in the slide deck, and then he would appear also in the Meet the Team brochure. Now I've got another guy, let's say it's Jordan, who is now the environmental engineer. I've got an investment property, we might have some issues, we need to get whatever phase you call that, and I'm going to use Jordan because I've used him the last 5 years, and he's the guy, and when buyers see it, they believe his work, but all I need is to have him in the brochure.
However, in one circumstance, if there is an environmental issue on the property prior to, you would want to bring him to the meeting and him be in the slide deck because he's going to be presenting on the issue that is the environmental. So if there's a specific reason to have that person there, you want to have him too.
That very well might be the case. If it's a key issue, you're right. So Meet the Team brochures, they're cool, and Jennifer really has done a nice job kind of mocking one up, and this is what they look like. It's not a letter size. You ever seen a Chili's menu? You know, it's less than a letter size, and it's got the spiral binding, and it's kind of long, and it's got a nice, hard, kind of slick cover to it. You know, so if you spill chili on it, it's easy to wipe off. And then it's got the tabs, you know, margaritas and then hamburgers. And so instead of you being a hamburger, you're a space planner or whatever it might be. I got it? Is that cool? And so that is the 5th touch point. Now understand, I've given you the 5 touch points and I haven't even presented yet. Do I have this incredible head start over the competition? And matter of fact, not only do I have this incredible head start, guess what I have? I'm halfway home. I've established rapport. And let's talk about the 5 touch points. What was touch point 1? Runs clear. Touch point 2? Touch point 3? Circulate the whiteboard session, sanitize it. Touch point 4? Draft agenda. Touch point 5. Is there any one of those that's not legitimate? Is there any one of those 5 that's contrived? Is there anyone that the client would get a draft agenda and say, oh, they're kissing up, you know, come on. Do you think, no, right? Is there anyone that would do the whiteboarding sessions, oh, this was a ruse, this was a way? No. Matter of fact, you know what they're thinking? Why aren't any of their competition doing any of these 5? What most did is some form of runs clear. They got the information or they got an RFP and off they go into their conference room with marketing to create a presentation. That's work, by the way. You want to talk about what's easy and what's hard. What's hard is to create a presentation with no needs analysis. What's easier, nothing is really easy, but what's easier is to create a presentation with a good, thorough needs analysis.
Mike, what do you mean by sanitize the whiteboard?
Great question. So remember when we did the whiteboard, there was Y1, Y2, Y3, S1 is, all that comes off. They never see that again. Those are our connect the dots for us.
You still have the bullet points, but you have no numbers, you just have the bullet.
Remember the one I showed you from the one from Seattle, the apartment complex in Seattle?
Yes, sir.
So those numbers all get taken off, and all they see is the bullet points of the remaining ones that were 1 through 5, and they're not even in the order that I would have them in the presentation. They are just the remaining points that survived.
And then you have them rank them if
No,
people.
they've already ranked them.
Okay.
Remember the whiteboard where getting me the best possible price was number 1, best time to go to the marketplace was number 2. They ranked, but those rankings get taken off.
Okay.
Because I don't want them, because I had it where you sent it to them and you said, what were those numbers?
So the ones that weren't ranked, you take those off. That didn't have.
The numbers that had no ranking, I take off. Sometimes Jennifer leaves them on. And so I've never asked Jennifer how she makes the decision which one she leaves on, which one she takes off. I'll tell you the ones that, and this is my guess, I'll let Jennifer answer it. Sometimes there was so much extra stuff on there, it was such baloney, that it just cluttered the whiteboard. Right. And so they got jettisoned altogether. Perfect. And I'm glad that you asked me that question. When you do the whiteboard, cram everything on one page. And the reason is if you go 2 pages and if it's done by a webinar or even done in their office with a Word document, as I told you, you toggle them back and forth, and that's a mess.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the draft agenda, you had mentioned you have the clean whiteboard, what we had discussed with the bullet points, and you had mentioned, here's also a couple points we think would be important to the conversation. You had 2.
Yeah.
And so.
And the one color was, here's what you wanted us to cover. And the green, I think, or whatever it was here's what we want to cover. Keep going.
And so you asked them, hey, would you like us to speak about this? And then how does that fall into the level of importance?
Well, I want to make sure I'm listening. I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
I did my whiteboarding session. I started off with the soft questions. Tell me everything that you want us to include in our presentation.
They did.
And they gave me stuff. And then the whiteboard session stalled. Then I came back. And then I started asking closed probe questions. Would you like for us to talk about open plan versus closed plan? Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's add that. So your question, where does it fall into the needs analysis?
So this was past the needs analysis. This was the draft agenda.
I said, okay, go ahead.
And you had brought up 2 extra points. I think we should speak about this issue and this issue. There was 2 issues.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, and so they're like, yeah, add it in.
Well, just so you know, in practice, I'm trying to think in the last 5 years that we've sent a draft agenda where we put in the items that we wanted, that they've ever said, we don't want you to cover that. But to me, that is better than to cover it and not have approval and it upset. Well, what was all that lease first own stuff about? You know, let them know in advance. Because you might have them say, but it's just a courtesy. I think it's just, courtesy to just let them know, we're going to cover what you want.
If you put something in the whiteboard.
But here's the reality. Yeah. You want to know the reality? Yeah. All of you are making broker-centric presentations anyway. You're not doing anything client-centric at all. I mean, if the 9 out of 10 presentations I look at, 99 out of 100 that I look at, they're all your stuff. Platform, my experience, recent assignments. And you know when I know it's true? Because you got a table of contents. And it's a duplicate of all the other firms in town table of contents. It's when I see executive summary, now I got a broker that asks some good questions, and now it's going to be a client-centric presentation. But the vast majority of presentations today are broker-centric presentations. So this little extra thing I'm doing on the agenda is so little bitty broker-centric. It's a courtesy of, there's a couple of items that we want to include in addition to what you wanted us to cover. That's why they rarely even say, no, don't do that, because it's such a small ask. Does that make sense? Because if you go the way that most brokers go, it's going to be 100% broker-centric. And it's only going to be by accident that you covered something that was important to them. I mean, you ought to look at your decks. You go to the Chamber of Commerce or the Economic Development Council, and you bring all that stuff in, and there's photographs of buildings and CoStar and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about? It's clutter. There's no punch. There's no zip. It's just stuff. Don't get me wound up. Yes, Dan.
So when should we, I guess during the meet the team, is that when we're kind of explaining about our credentials and things like that, like deals we've done in the past, stuff like that?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. I beg you, all of you, do not start a presentation by, I want to introduce the team and have an org chart. You want to talk about something that's not cool? The best time to introduce Tanner is when he speaks for the first time. because remember, you've got his slide in the deck. But to me, it is not a client-centric beginning by, you know, we appreciate the time that you've given us. We've brought our team members, and let me introduce each one.
'Cause I feel like that's like what all like the older brokers, like that's how they start off their presentations.
It's not just older.
Yeah.
It's older. It's broke, and so. No, you're right. But
I just feel like that's how every presentation.
But not if I've consulted with the team, because here's what I want you to do. When you start your presentation, and I'm your consultant, you start with 16-inch guns blazing. The presentation begins this way. We appreciate the valuable time that you've given us. We clearly understand the 4 items that you want us to cover today. The first item up is how we make sure that we negotiate leases, get you at least $35 a square foot. Second, we're going to transition and how we make sure that our negotiation minimizes any tenant improvement allowance that's required. We also clearly understand you want to get this property 90% by, you with me? That's just so you know. I don't start a presentation with, let me introduce our team. Now, listen up. Do not put an org chart from the 80s in your deck. The best time to interview Tanner is before Tanner speaks for the first time. We're fortunate to have Tanner on this team because no one understands the concept of open plan versus closed plan like Tanner. Now understand, when everyone walked in, what happened? What happened when everybody walked in? Everyone shook hands. Why do I need to introduce you again? Tanner met everybody. And matter of fact, who is Tanner going to sit next to? Well, yeah, it's going to be a client, but which client? Where'd you go to school?
FSU.
Which client is he going to sit next to? The one that was at FSU. I mean, some of you are not thinking, let me look at LinkedIn of everyone that is going to be participating on the client side and who has most in common with that person. Like Hampton-Sydney, that you know you can have a meaningful discussion. And so you need to make sure that you do enough research that you sit down and you create that little brief conversation after you've met everybody. Because that's the person you want to be sitting next to is the one that you think you would have the best rapport with. I do not want you all to go into a conference room and the team on one side and the client on the other. That's not cool. The only time that happens is when you're in a conference room that is all glass. What side of the table do you take if you're in a conference room that's all glass? And you knew that because what did you do 2 days in advance? Your reconnaissance. So you went in, you came back and report. I see you. You report. I don't forget. I'm not that old. What am I going to say? I'm teasing. I'm kidding. So you go in and you do reconnaissance. It's all glass. What side does your team take? This is the only exception. No, you put the back of the client to the glass. Because guess what happens? If they're doing presentation after presentation, who's coming early? The next team. I've had this happen before, and it's not cool. The next team comes in, all glass, and the broker waves to the point of contact that you're presenting to. I could see David. He'd be terrible. He'd be waving and high-fiving. Oh, yeah, he'd be like a second grader. He would be a complete disruption. But if you take your client and you take that side, that's the glass, now you force them to do what? Take the side with back to the glass. Other than that, I do not want to play lacrosse with my client. I want one of you, one of them, one of you, one of them. I want it to be like family. But other than that, I think, yes, sir, I didn't forget you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
Did you forget the question?
No, I did not.
Let's
So, to your point, right, when you have, when you're doing a pitch and there's 5 or 15 pitching that day, the client's sitting on one side of the table, when you walk in, you're the third team to go in, you literally ask them, like, hey, let's get a little bit interesting here, and let's move around, you can sit here, you can sit there. Because typically it's like they're sitting on one side of the table already.
No. Normally they take a break.
Well, I mean.
After each presentation, most of them go get a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom. In my experience, it's rare that they sit from presentation to presentation because the presentations that they see that's not yours, that was not Lipsy customized, were so boring, they got to take a break. I mean, there's no way, their mind is so numb They cannot just sit there thinking that they're going to get ready to get another one. I mean, I'm being serious. They normally, but they might, so they're saying the rare exception that they sit, keep going with your question.
Yeah, I mean, say you're up first, they're already sitting on.
No, there ain't no, if I'm up first, there is no way. Did you get here before me this morning? Yesterday? The day before? Well, then how could I not pick whatever chair I wanted in here? And so you're always first. You find out what time do you open, and if the presentation's at 8:30, I'm there probably by 7:45. I am connected to their flat screen, and I'm live, and I figured out, of course I knew by reconnaissance whether I had to do it by cable or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever, you with me? Or dongle or whatever the hell they're doing. I'm not showing up at 8:20. You guys and gals that are showing up for an 8:30 presentation, 8:25, you deserve what you're about ready to get. You can't connect. Now the client is in the chair staring at you. You're sweating bullets because you're thinking, this is a train wreck, right? You're getting exactly what you deserve. Because you should have gotten in there at least 45 minutes before the client gets there, and you can take your time with your jacket off, and you can get set up, and you can take a deep breath, and then you position your team members, around the conference table, and then they come in and they do the fill-in. Are you with me? Yeah, I know you might not like what I'm telling you, but that's.
No, I mean, there is an exception there, right? Like,
So you want the exception. You remind me of the George Carlin joke, where at one time, any Catholics in here? I would have never have taken you for a Catholic. To be honest, I never thought that. I thought I'd be seeing you at the local delicatessen. I just didn't think that. And I can say that because my father's Jewish, my mother's Catholic Italian. So people always ask me, but Mike, what the heck are you? Depends on the client. I'm flexible. I can go either way.
Cashew, Mike, that's the phrase, cashew.
Is it cashew? And no kidding, in Lake Charles, Louisiana, because there was only 100 Jewish families, that I would go to Tipple on Friday and then Mass with my mother on Sunday. So what was the question? No, there was a question that was a good one. No, before the Catholic. Oh, George Carlin, thank you so much. Because I would have never remembered that, by the way, because I don't normally have this in my presentation. So being a Catholic, eating meat on Friday used to be a mortal sin, not a venial sin. I mean, one of them bad sins, mortal sin. They changed that years ago. So George Carlin's joke is, you're on a slow freighter, and it's Thursday, and you're getting close to the international date line, but you don't know it because you're in the berthing quarters. And you have a beef jerky, and you open up the beef jerky just as this ship crosses into the international date line. It's now Friday, but you don't know that. And you eat the beef jerky. Adam, is that a mortal sin? That's your question. I mean, that's kind of that crazy rare exception, and I make a lot of presentations. I'm trying to think, sincerely, the last time a group was in the room before me. And you know what the last time it happened? Arden Realty, I was presenting to them on how they could generate their REIT, how they could generate additional revenue besides just rent. And when I got there, Victor Coleman, Richard Ziman, Bobby Petticord, I can still see them. It was at a country club north of LA, not too far from Santa Barbara, and they were there. And so I just had to take my place. So it does happen, but it's a rare occurrence. And then you just got to kind of live with it. But here's the good news. Your presentation, your game plan is so crazy good, I could stand outside and make it and still win. You know what I mean? I do it this way. I'm going to yell through the door, but I'm able to advance my slides, all right? I mean, you better be that good and that practiced and that confident. So if you think that where you sat was going to make the difference in whether you won or not, you got a problem. I mean, if you're betting the whole ranch on I sat in the right place, it's just one more thing. I get this question all the time. How many things are there that I should be mindful of in winning more assignments? About 100. So that might be one that you can't add to the list, and so you got a bunch. But as long as you're getting a bunch of them, the 5 touches, the needs analysis, the whiteboard, introduction of the team, all the right stuff, you got the preponderance of what's needed. I think we had, yes ma'am.
So I think this is part of the question that you were asking, because I also had that same thing. So on the draft, when you have the broker content.
Draft agenda.
The draft
Go ahead.
agenda, okay, that you are suggesting these two things that we talk about. Where in the actual presentation would you put those? Kind of like in the morph section, because you wouldn't want it to be at the end where the punch is at.
Great question. So if you remember when I did my draft agenda, there were 4 items the client wanted, which are going to be in the executive summary. And then there's 2 items that I want to add. One was lease first own and the other was construction management. So I would put the construction management probably lease open plan versus closed plan, because that's the one that would be closest to build out. All right. The lease first own, where they wanted to talk about what were the rents and the concessions in the marketplace. So the best place to juxtapose that discussion would be discussion of concessions and rents. And you're saying as long as we're on the discussion of rents, one of the things that you could think about, and we've done some analysis, with today's interest rates, which are still very attractive, you could very well be better off. And let me just show you what that model might look like. So there's always a play. Yeah, there's always, but it ain't going to be last.
Right.
I'm not going to finish talking about lease first own last. I'm going to put that up a little bit higher up. All right? Is this stuff awesome? Is this? Tell me this is not cool stuff. Are you having as much fun as I'm having? This is what I want on the conference table when the client comes in. All right? This is called a placemat playbill. So this is in front of the client when they come in. This is hard stock. Depending on the size iPads that you're using, what is that? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I need to do 2 things. Oh, I didn't realize you were there. Did you step? How long have you been there?
I've been back here for 2 years.
Oh, okay. You're like unbelievable. You could be like CIA kind of stuff. Where the hell's my iPad? That was unbelievable. Of course, I might have been in the zone, and so anyone could have walked in. Anybody could have walked in. And
Would you do like tabloid size if you're not using an iPad?
8.5 by, what do we have on this thing? We used to have the dimension 8.5 by 11 is the standard playbill size. But you can go, so I use 2 size iPads when I'm presenting. We use Conference Pad. This is a standard size iPad. And the cool thing about using Conference Pad, and I'll show you that in just a minute, is if you go with the iPad Pros, they're 13 inches, you can go legal size on your a placemat playbill. And so on your placemat playbill, this is in front of the prospect. Now, Adam, one of the cool things about seating, and we've done this for large presentations, we oftentimes want the most senior person on the client side closest to the screen. And then we want our best salesperson, our senior broker, closest to that person. We want the person who created the slide deck on the laptop at the very end of the opposite end, because they're probably not going to say a word during the presentation. I do not want, on a big monster presentation, a broker on the computer. I want the person who is the most familiar with the slide deck. In this case, Jennifer. You get in a jam, guess what you do? Jennifer, I have no idea where the hell that slide is, and you just keep tap dancing until your team member finds it. That happens at a presentation. You know, things get changed. And then I want to have more junior people towards the back end. I want the senior people. What you do to control where people sit where, we don't have it on this one, but we have a place for a name on the upper left-hand corner. And so it becomes sort of like a, what do you call those things when you go to a wedding? They got like a little... Well, you got a seating chart, but then when you can look for your name sometimes. What do you call it? Name? Place cards. So this becomes sort of like a subtle place card. So we'll put like Tim Rios up there, and when they start seeing names up there, this is crazy, they start looking, and then the most senior guy got no problem because I've got him almost at the head of the table, which is where he or she should be anyway. So we have, on large presentations, pre-arranged the seating. And that would be if it's a group of 10 to 12, where there's 4 or 5 of us and 4 or 5 of them. We use that 1 out of 50 times. Got it? So what we do here is, this is the agenda which was sent 2-3 days in advance, that they approved, and now there it is. And the reason this is important is you'll oftentimes have people that go on a tangent and you're able to say, you know, Nathan, that is fantastic. Let me tell you what that reminds me of about our agenda. And you're able to, because you got to be on time. Tim teases me, but I love the tease, being a Swiss railroad, you want to run a presentation on time. And so the agenda helps you make sure that if people, you know, kind of get off onto a tangent, you can get them back, all right? As Jennifer said, and I'm glad you brought this, for years and years we've been using these little things right here. We don't use books. They're too expensive, they're an aggravation, they're a waste of time. This is a 2 gig memory stick that fits into a USB. All they get from us is a plastic sleeve with this, and then the Argus, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, Word document, whatever you got on your presentation is on this little stick. Is that cool?
It is cool. I want to know where to get them.
Well, Jennifer orders them like 250 at a time, whatever. What are they, about $4 a piece? So, and they fit right in here. The only paper or printed material they get from us is only 2 pieces. It is this playbill, and it is the Meet the Team brochure. Those are the only 2 things we print. Those are the only 2 things we print. Everything else is digital. And here's the reason why. If I give you a book and you want to share it with a team member who didn't come, I don't know how they get it to them. Do they send it? Do they scan it? Do they get this? They can email it to 1,000 people, can't they? They can look at it they can look at it at their computer on the plane if they want to. But a book, I can't tell you how many times, I don't know about you, Tim, that I have thrown presentation books away at an airport. And I've pulled out the 5 pages that I thought I needed, and I've just stuffed the book, every book that I had, because there was no way I was going to carry on my heavy luggage that I already had with 5 books. It is never going to happen. That thing right there with 2 gigs, you can get them 5 gigs if you want, that I'll put in my pocket or put somewhere. And I'll look at it, and that way, instead of just looking at 3 pages, I have the entire presentation. I've saved a lot of time and money by doing it that way. All right. This is, oh, you did this one, thank you. This is one that Jennifer created from Seattle, which is the one that one of the firms that are in here actually worked on, and this is what the client wanted them to do. We've recommended Conference Pad for 15 years. This is so cool. I'm able to connect my iPad to 4 of our presentation iPads, and all they see is what I'm showing them. You got it? So it really is a cool way to present to a small group, 1 or 2 people. Instead of going PowerPoint, or they don't even have the capability of doing PowerPoint, put the presentation on your iPad, bring along 2 iPads that are connected to this iPad, and they're able to see the slides. And what you do is you just take the iPads that they're looking at. Now I want you to imagine the following. This is, remember the playbill? So imagine this is the playbill, and then what you do, and you're not in a conference room yet, and I set up the iPad like this. So now you have the agenda that we're going to cover with my thumb drive right over here, and then you've got the iPad. If I've got iPad Pros, which are wider than this, then I make sure that my playbill is a little bit wider to be almost the same size as this right here. Is that cool? Now I do have brokers say, but Mike, some of my clients aren't into technology. Are you with me? I said, let me ask you a question. Do you think that these people who are not on technology, do you think they know how to watch television? They say, yeah, I think they know how to watch television. I say, well, you know what? That's all they're doing. All you've done is you've taken what would be on the screen and you've put it on the iPad. It's a little television. It has nothing to do with technology. They don't have to do anything but listen and watch. So that's the advantage. And these are fabulous ways to do tours. Tim, you might have been, you were doing yesterday morning, you were doing fundamentals. I was talking about Andy Marin, who very well could be one of the best investment brokers in the Northeast. He must have 30 iPads that he uses because he's got multiple teams that are doing tours, making presentations, and they have found it such a convenient way, an efficient way to do tours and presentations. And we like to recommend an app called Conference Pad. And I didn't even know about this until I'm doing a program for Tishman Speyer in DC. I said, y'all doing anything kind of cool? They said, we do a lot of stuff that's cool, but one of the coolest things that we do is all of our tours are done using a Conference Pad. I said, what's that? They said, tenant rep comes, we hand them an iPad. They've got 2 tenants that are with them. We hand them iPads. Instead of handing them a dated brochure, we've just updated everything the morning of, and then we show them, and then we email them the deck, right from the iPad, and we're good to go. I said, that's pretty cool. And we've been using it ever since. So that's the first time I ever saw it. What time is it? What time did we start? 8:30? Have I gone almost 2 hours? Almost. And I got to turn this over to Tim at 11:15.
1 hour and 51 minutes.
All right, let's do this. Closing techniques. This is just some of my favorites, all right? Any up there that you want me to do?
Smoke out.
Who wants a smoke out close? All right, the smoke out is a sharp angle extension. So I'm going to trial close you. Do you know the difference between a trial close and a close?
Trial close is to see how far you can push them.
Well, no.
See if they'll bite.
Well, yeah. Trial close is you're looking for feedback. Close, you're looking for a decision. So a trial close would be, what's your first impression? What are your thoughts of my presentation? And then based upon what they say, should I now move to a close? One of my absolute favorite closes when negotiating and selling is the sharp angle close. Nathan, I'm going to trial close you, and you're going to come back and you're going to say, Mike, I like the presentation, but the fee's too high. Nathan, can you give me your first impressions on our presentation?
I like your presentation, but your fee's too high.
Nathan, let me ask you this. If I can get you comfortable with the fee, will you commit to us today? That is a sharp angle close. It is one of my absolute favorites for selling and negotiating, and here's the reason why. Because if someone's down to 1 more month free rent, I wouldn't say, yeah, let me go talk to the landlord. I'd say, David, let me just tell you, landlord's going to have a yak attack when I ask him. But let me ask you this. If I can get you some portion of a month, I don't know what it's going to be, or we finish negotiating, is that your last ask? And I need to know right now. And if he said, promise, Mike, I will not, just get us comfortable with 1 month. I said, I need your word. And I come down a couple times, are you sure, commit, and now that's a sharp angle. A smoke out close, which was your question, is I'm going to trial close you. You're going to come back and say, the commission's too high. I'm going to ask you to say, no, I also think the term of the agreement's too long. So let me ask you this. If I get you comfortable with the commission, will you commit to us today?
No, commission's too high.
What else is there?
The other one you said.
The term of the agreement is too long.
It's too long.
So we have 2 things on the table, commission and term. Is that correct? If I get you comfortable with those today, can we go ahead and move forward?
Yeah.
As soon as I go from the sharp angle and ask one more, that's a smoke out. All right? Because I'm there, so I might as well find out everything that's remaining, because then you don't want, and I don't want to steal Tim's thunder, because now what you could end up is with a nibbler, right? Because now the nibbler finds out that you never close them on that last item, so guess what they do? Especially tenant reps are the worst. You don't sharp angle a tenant rep, you're going to have a miserable experience for the next 2 weeks. Because if you concede on that item, then it's parking, and then it's signage, and then it's can we get closer to the elevator, and things do not change. They're going to nibble until the present value of the deal has become so attractive. The sharp angle really terminates the nibbler. I am going to do closing techniques last. What I'm going to do before that is just a few minutes of team brokerage, but we're going to take a 7-minute break. When you come back in 45 minutes, or between now and 11:15, I've got to do team brokerage, and we're going to have a lot of fun with closing. Got it? 5 minutes, go.
Absolutely. He's like, hey, this is what we're excited and then I thought that was.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
I would love to know more like
With the window.
cold calling
thing about just having people come in, and so
Window?
Yeah, we were
Oh,
talking about
glass. Yeah.
doing presentations, having
With a glass wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we typically have like developers come in, they want to get a tour of the Jacksonville market, and we bring them into the boardroom, and here's the presentation. And so we're on the 15th floor, downtown Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And so we have a big glass panorama view of downtown.
What's your question?
And so I was saying, we usually sit with the panorama view behind us, and then they can come in and they sit right there at the table.
How many are there of you?
There's 3 on our team.
And then how many of the client? 1 or 2?
4 max, yeah.
Well, can't one of you sit on their side?
I mean, totally, yeah.
I said, to me,
I just wanted to hear your opinion on
to
that.
me, I don't want to play volleyball with them. You know, I don't want them all on one side and me on one side. It's not that it's adversarial, but it's not collaborative.
Yeah.
But if
I see what you're saying.
you're showing a lot of confidence, you go sit next to the client, right? You and me, man, we're tight, and I want that kind of perception.
Okay, yeah.
But if I walk in and you stake out one side, this is our side over here, and to me, collaboration is more important than seeing the city of Jacksonville that they live in.
Well, they're from out of town, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's got windows. They're probably.
Yeah. No, and so the reason why I was asking is because when I've done those presentations, I'm so concerned on, we're on this side, they're on that side. Here's where they sit. I got the books, and my lead broker is always trying to say, don't do that. You know, they'll sit wherever they want to, and so I guess.
That's why he's the lead broker.
Yeah, and so.
That's why. How old is he?
59.
That's why he's the senior, right, David?
I'll have to agree with you there, Mike.
Huh?
I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Actually, multi-part question. I've got a deal I'm working on. I think I mentioned
Sophia,
yesterday.
the other question is,
Large development deal. And I want to incorporate
because you're in your
this
twenties and
presentation
twenty-somethings
into
don't carry cash.
these
ever.
potential 50 clients. How can I,
It says cash only on it right now.
I'm
even
thinking
though
in
it's
my
got
head
cash.
how I can put it together, but
I'm
to
sorry,
be the
Kevin,
most
excuse me.
persuasive in getting them to say yes. Because you've got
the slides that we've given you. I don't want you working on your email and all that stuff. Are you with me?
Yes.
I'm a tough presenter, but I need you focused because there's no way. Matter of fact, who was it that said either yesterday or the day before, it's impossible to do two things at the same time? Was that you, Tim? No, it wasn't. And it's true.
One or the other, yeah.
And so Lottie will tell you, and I know that she doesn't appreciate it, she'll come in and I have a little back office that's off the garage, and she comes in and I'll say, sweetheart, I'm focused right now. And I know that must be an offensive thing to say to somebody, but I agree with Tim 100%. You can only do one thing at a time. There's no way you can listen. And the reason I'm being so emphatic is this stuff is going to be a difference maker in the business. To take y'all's firm over there, if I told you the vice chairman that hire me every month to help them win monster assignments, it's a long list that starts at Bill Ruin in Baltimore, going to Malcolm McComb in Atlanta, Georgia, over to Tyler Anderson in Phoenix, okay? To Danny Baker back in Dallas, over to, are you with me? It's that kind of list. And so if a vice chairman says we need to hire Mike to help us with our presentation, those of you that hope to get there one day, I'm hoping you're thinking, maybe this is stuff that I can use. Let's do team brokerage. So we work with a lot of teams, all right? And so they call me up and say, Mike, we want you to come work with our team. I said, oh, really? Tell me about it. Well, we're a multifamily team, we're a tenant rep team, we're an office team, we're an investment sales team. Really? That's cool. And I said, sometimes people call themselves teams, but they're not. The one I get all the time are those regional offices that are not part of a national company that have 9 brokers, and they get me confused. They said, Mike, I want you to come work with our team. But I find out they've got 9 independent contractors that are doing their own thing, but they use this sort of collective word team to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy. Are you with me? They're not a team. They're just a brokerage company. But they call it, and I get that. And I think it's, come work with our team. And we're really what they're saying is come do a training program for our 9 associates, and only 2 of us really work together. So I'll say there's some questions I want to ask you to determine, are you really a team? Number 1 is, are you on a shared database? Have you selected a CRM, Salesforce, Apto, Ascendix, ClientLook, RealNext, HubSpot? I don't care which one. And does everyone use it? And when you contact someone, the notes are put in and you attach proposals and all, are you using it? It's not on your desktop, you're using it. Yes. And then I say, is the lead broker or senior using it? Well, he's the one that should be using it, but he's not. Because he's a little later on in his career, and no. The first thing I'm thinking about is then who on the team needs to be getting this information from the senior and making sure it is captured in the system. Because I can tell you, if you've got a senior who's in their 50s, Tim, I don't know about you, but you might find 1 out of 100 that might actually start putting stuff in, but the other 99, it'll never happen. But their information is the most valuable to get into the system. So which staff person is going to talk to Mary or Bob after a tour and say, when should you call them back? What message should I send them right now thanking them for looking at the space? Is there any documents that need to be prepared? Tell me everything I need to know. And oh, by the way, I will create a callback list for you. How soon do you want to call them back? Well, I want to call them back a week from today. Are you with me? So that is how it gets a senior broker who understands the importance of it will not key punch. It's not happening. They're too busy. They're rainmakers. And so you need to figure out on the team, how do we get their stuff into the system? How do we get business cards with rubber bands? How do we get their Excel? How do we get into their Outlook? And how do we get, because their stuff is really the gold that needs to be in the CRM. Got it? Of all the team consulting assignments I go on, I'm up front. If you're not committed and you're not on a CRM, just so you know, in the next 90 days that's going to happen. I'll set up some meetings with Ascendix and Apto. I'm not going to be on those meetings. They'll make presentations to you, but within the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you've got to pick one. I don't care which one it is. I can tell you based upon your practice and based upon the market you're in, I think ClientLook might be a good fit. RealNext might be a good fit. You're pretty sophisticated. You know, I think that the Pipe Drive might be a good fit for you. But take a look at it and then let me know. And then what I do is we kind of lay out a plan over the next 60, 90 days of how we get your stuff, your stuff, your stuff, your stuff that's on a business card, that's in Excel, that's on Outlook, that's in constant contact, all into one place. Second, tactical objectives organized by date. Every team should have at least 3 per quarter. An example of one is we're going to build or revise our website by August the 1st. And my job is to make sure that they stay on track to get it done by August the 1st. And to make sure we have a couple of check-in meetings, and if we're not getting there by August the 1st, what's happened, why did it get sideways, what can we do to get it back on track? Let me tell you, I'll give you a 2-week extension. Who was it in here that was telling me yesterday about a team that I'd gotten in their face, and who was that? One of y'all said, Mike, oh, one of our teams told me that you got all upset with them, and was that my imagination? It'll come to me. Y'all don't remember one of y'all having a conversation? So there was a team that is with your firm that said, we're working with Mike, and he got all upset with us because we missed a date, and he made sure we got back on track. Team compensation plan. Teams do not have a deal-by-deal compensation plan. If let's say you say, we want to put together a team that we blow it to smithereens in 90 days, that's the comp plan you want. That you just do it deal by deal. A team compensation plan says deal gets done no matter who worked on it. No matter who worked on it, it comes into the pot, and I'm going to give you some examples of the way compensation can be split. There are exceptions. An exception might be a tenant rep team. And really, that is not a team, it's an alliance, where you've got 3 very capable tenant reps that are really doing their own thing. But they hired a staff person that they're contributing to 1/3 to that overhead. But your deals are yours, and your deals are yours, and your deals are yours. Even though you call yourself the such and such team, you really are an alliance. And it probably makes more sense not to have a team compensation plan. It really makes sense if you're a tenant rep broker to have an individualized plan that your stuff is your stuff. You can still call yourself a team, but recognize what you aren't. You aren't a veritable team. You are an alliance. You're hanging out together, but y'all aren't splitting. You do your work. You do your work. There's some disadvantages to that, but at least know what you are. Plan of accountability. Teams measure. We're going to give you some examples of this also. Who's making the calls, who's going to ICSC this year, who attends the Economic Development Council luncheon each month, who adds to the database, you know, who does the tours less than 2,000 square feet, who does the tours greater than 2,000 square feet. There's a division of labor, and that is measured. For senior brokers that call Tim and me, is it Tim and me or Tim and I? I always get Tim.
Me. If you would say me, if I'm not in it, then it's me.
That, even when y'all tell me that, I still don't understand. It's just the weirdest thing.
Well, they don't call I, they call me.
Tim and I, Tim and me. So we get these calls that the seniors call us, and they potent seniors, and says, Mike, I got a team member, I got a real problem with him, and I got a reputation as being a hard ass, but I'm not good at getting rid of people. Sound familiar? I'm not good. And I said, yeah. And they said, I got a person that's not working out. I said, yeah. What should I do about it? I got no idea. I said, let me see their plan of accountability. Well, what do you mean by that? I said, let me tell you, what is the plan of expectations you have? What business development? I brought them on the team, so I didn't have to do a lot of the business development. Then what is the quantifiable expectation that you have? Number of calls, number of meetings, number of presentations. They said, we don't have that. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I got a pretty good idea if they're working hard or not. I said, that's your problem. That when you sat down with him, you never said, you know, if you make X number of calls, I would expect at least 1 meeting per day. at the minimum 3 to 4 meetings per week, and of that we would hope to get 1 listing. There's nothing to measure. The only thing that's to measure is your dissatisfaction. And the reason you're dissatisfied is because they never had a true compass heading of what North was. That all they knew is it was going to be your vibe, that whether they were doing a good job or not. And I don't know how you manage a junior because it's a good vibe or not. So let's do this. Let's be fair to this junior. Let's put them on a 90-day measurable plan. And then you've got something to talk about in 3 months. And if they get with the program, we know they're with the program because they clearly know what's expected of them. But right now, they're so new, they don't know what's expected of them. So they're doing what they think they should be doing, because the truth of the matter is you've given them very little coaching and no mentoring, and they're kind of just on their own, right? And then finally, any of y'all from Atlanta in here? The best net lease broker east of the Mississippi, I'm not going to tell you who or what firm, but some of you might know who I'm talking about, east of the Mississippi. Stan Johnson would probably be west of the Mississippi, but this guy, he and his team would be east, he and his partner. They hired us, and he said, Mike, when you come to Atlanta, don't you dare talk about business development. He said, that's not our problem. He says, we cannot process the business we've got. So don't say about your this and cold call that. That's not our issue. We cannot, our pipeline is just, it's clogged. So we're looking at how they do their business and whatnot. And I said to the senior, how many emails do you get today? Legit emails. He says 100. So that's impossible. He said, no, we're net lease. I get an email of, does the target lease have an extension? When does it happen and for how long? Don't tell me that's not legit. Well, that sounds pretty legit to me. And then tell me another one. Does Stallbacks have the right to terminate at any time over the next 5 years? That's kind of legit, you know. Are you all with me? I said, you got a smart team, you got some staff people, you got some junior brokers. Are they pretty much in the know? Yeah. I said, how many of those emails do you think they could clear without getting your input? They said, a lot of them. I mean, if Starbucks has an option to terminate, I probably wouldn't even know. I'd have to ask the junior, somebody to look it up to find out. So I said, let's do this. You're going to start sharing your email, your whole outlook, with who on your team? Well, this person, that person, and this person. So there are 3 people. We've been doing that. When I came back from Atlanta, which was I don't know how many years ago, I said, Jennifer, guess what we're going to start doing? We're going to start sharing our email. I want to see your stuff. I want to see my stuff. I already told you all that, remember a couple days ago, that some of you want to know when class started at 8:30, and it was sent to Jennifer, but she was driving home, and I didn't want to wait for her to respond to it because she's got enough going on in her world. So I said, it's easy enough for me to say 8:30, right? And change the signature block from Jennifer to me. That was easy enough. So sharing email is important because much of the communication that takes place on a team, it takes place via email. The in and the out. And not that you're a snoop, and matter of fact, just so you can say I'm not a snoop, get a Gmail address. I'm not looking for your personal stuff. I don't want your personal stuff. If you're going to have communication, have it. I just want to know. Senior brokers want to know. They just want to know because they can counsel, they can mentor, they can contribute, but if they don't know, they can't make much of a contribution. So it's not that they are detectives, they just want to know. Especially if it's a junior broker that's less than 2 years in the business that's sending stuff to an important client, they want to be in the loop. And Jennifer has put together this email sharing roadmap. Now I'm going to do this fast because I got to do this and closing techniques in the next 30 minutes, all right? Different types of teams, but let me tell you what I want to move to. I want to move to whichever one comes up first. Remember this performance leasing plan? We said that you would never lose another listing a presentation with this. We took this same concept and created it for teams. So the exact same concept we use for leasing vacant space, office, retail, industrial, we took the same thing for teams. And we call it measuring the team machine. So the first objective I have when working with teams is to get them on a shared database. The second document we leave with is a team machine. And we start off with a blank template, and I ask the team, I don't want to know who's responsible for it, but tell me, starting with the smallest denominator to a commissioned event, everything that happens from your smallest denominator that we should be keeping up with to collecting a commission. And we have a big discussion. Well, I need to make a sales call. I say, well, that's maybe a little bit later on. I need to do some drop-ins. That could be a little later. So maybe they eventually get to, well, we should add a new name to our CRM. Okay, adding new contacts. I don't want to know who's responsible for that yet. What else do you need to do? Think small. We could send out some emails. Well, there's all different kinds of emails. We talked about that. E-touches, e-comps, e-comp teasers, right? Which one's particular? We love that e-comp teaser idea. I don't want to know who's responsible for doing it yet, but let's put e-comp teasers up. What's next? Whoa. We need to attend some monthly events. Like what? Well, NAOP is really good for us. I don't want to know who's attending it. Let's just put attend NAOP. Are y'all with me? And we develop, and then we start getting into calls and listing presentations and tours and then proposals. We get through the whole process. What we've done is we've created a factory shop floor that you see at the very end of this manufacturing facility, someone adding a new contact. And then you see this sort of metaphor of this shop floor of then an email going out and someone attending a NAOP luncheon. Can you see it? Now you have different people moving around the shop floor, but we got to arrange the shop floor first. Can you visualize that? And I see this whole floor moving towards the commission out here, but we got to be realistic. You got it? And so then we take a list of our chart of accounts, and I come back and say, who is the person that is most appropriate to add a new name to the CRM? We put a name in. And then I say, how many should we do per week? And when Jennifer creates this, she takes the month, she divides it by 4 of the number of weeks that happens to be in that month, and you'll see the week 1, week 2 with it. And so we like to know by week. Well, you should do at least, 2 a day, 10 per week would be good, which is 40 for the month. So there's a total of 40 under the term plan. And then when I start having you check in with me week over week, I start wondering why we're falling off, because I can see we're into 2 weeks into the month and you've only added 8 when we should have added how many? 20, because the goal is 40. And I say, listen, and then I get this. The person that is responsible for adding the new names to the CRM tells me the brokers didn't give him or her the contacts. I said, well, I am so sorry for being inarticulate. I just apologize for not being clear. It is your responsibility to add 10 names per week, not the brokers. If you've got to go sit on their desk and tell them you're not leaving till you get the 10 names, then that's what's going to happen. It is not their responsibility. It is your responsibility, it's your measured activity to get the 10 in. That's how a senior broker measures the junior. Well, they weren't there in the office, I got voicemail. After 90 days of that, it's not working out because they're not meeting expectations. And even though through all my mentoring and coaching, are y'all with me? This is hard stuff. What I'm showing you right now, this ain't a lot of fun. But I will tell you that when the team embeds this discipline in their culture, they're on their way. They have set full sail. I mean, they are on their, and the best teams, they are structured, they are measured, they are disciplined. It is not an accident, the kind of numbers we have seen these last 5 or 6. These are smart, enlightened, well-led teams that measure, that are on CRMs, by the way. I'm trying to think of one of my highest performing teams that's kind of casual about a CRM or measurement. I'm lost for who that might be. All right. One more thing, and then I'm going to take a few minutes and have some fun with closing techniques, and then turn it over to Tim. Questions on plans? Questions on plans? All right. You're going to get this slide deck. Y'all are fantastic. So they've closed their laptops to do their emails. So Tim, guess what they're doing now? Unbelievable. All right. Example of team compensation plans. Got it? This is a sample. Oh, by the way, this is not a sample. This is, matter of fact, a team, an industrial team that I work with. I won't tell you where in Tennessee, but in Tennessee. And they're with one of the firms that's in here today. That's what I'll tell you. They came to me and said, Mike, we're adding a junior broker to our team. He's been an analyst for a year, but he's coming off a salary, and we want you to help design a compensation plan. What are you doing, Tanner?
Taking a picture up in Spartan.
Oh, well, that's cool. But I was saying, you're so flagrant. He was holding it up high like that, like you're not even cheating on your email. He's flaunting it. He says, Lipsy talks about email, and I saw this. Yeah, I didn't even. I apologize. Okay.
No.
That is one of the exceptions. You can absolutely take photographs. Can you imagine what kind of senior broker I would be? Huh? Yeah. We'd have a lot of fun though, right? So the senior calls me. It was the associate. And the associate on this team had been with the senior for 5-6 years, and they were making beautiful music together. It was a beautiful thing. And the associate says, Mike, my senior who loves you wants you to create a comp plan. I said, I'll be glad to do it. I told him how much we charge. And so I had discussions with all the team members. And so the senior's vision was that this junior who was coming off a salary would go on the traditional house split. And I said, you've lost me. I said, you say you're adding this person to the team, but they're on whatever the split is at the house, 50-50. I said, this youngin' is going to be so worried about doing their own deals. I said, how are they going to contribute to what you're doing? They're going to be sweating bullets getting their stuff done. I said, you asked me to do a plan. Here we go. Now, this stuff right here is maybe stuff. This stuff is what they did. So I said, you do a deal that's $200,000 and the house gets their scrape of 80, right? So now there's 120 left over. There's some allocations or line items that most teams should have. One is a bonus pool. Now the bonus pool typically is for either the staff people that are on salary or on this young broker that maybe is getting a relatively small commission. Next comes memberships and dues. We want to get our team members CCIM, SIOR, ICSC, Bowman NAIOP, Urban Land. Got it? We want to make sure we have a technology. We want to get those iPads. We want to upgrade to Windows 11, but we don't have the right machines. The firm's not going to do that for us. We're cool. We're adults. We can do it on our own. One of the things that a lot of seniors were doing because they are what they are, they would put everything on their credit card and never get reimbursed. Every time there was a lunch, every time a guest came over, a team member had the seniors. So that's why we strongly recommend team credit cards and that there's a reimbursement plan if you do not have team credit cards. But probably the easiest way to do it is just to have a team credit card, all right? But if not, make sure you get reimbursed. I don't want this one to confuse you. You decide you want to add an analyst to the team. The House says we're not in a position to contribute this year. We'll talk about it in December. We might be able to do it next year. And you say, I need an analyst. And so you hire an analyst that you are responsible for that overhead. More than likely, the company wants to run that payroll through their books. They don't want you going out on your own and paying this person because they want to make sure everyone's being paid properly, right? And you can't blame them. So what this is the analyst that you brought on your team that you are responsible for them. They're getting their payroll from the house, but when you close deals, you reimburse the house for their payroll. I've had some brokers get so confused, they said, but Mike, what about the split? This has nothing to do with the split. This is reimbursing the house for the overhead you wanted. You got it? So it has nothing to do with the splits. You got your 60% or whatever, it was 60%. Now, before this junior showed up, this senior was getting 65, and the associate more than 5 years on this team was getting 35. They were happy as clams. They loved it. So I go and said, here's what we're going to do. Senior, I need 3 of your points. Associate, I need 2 of your points, and we're going to give 5 to the person coming off a salary. Oh, what? I thought we were going to have to call 911. I thought, the defibrillators they've got like, every other floor, we're going to have to get them. Boom! Just pop them. Boom! Revive them. Mike, that's not the way we do it. They come off a salary, they go on, they got to be hungry, and can you imagine, just this 59-year-old, just maybe he was in his early 60s, just that's not the way we do it, and like something from the 80s.
Nobody paid me when I was
Yeah. Yeah. I said, I won't say his name. I said the objective is for you to make more money with less friction. And don't get hung up on the percentage. Get hung up on what you're earning each year. All right? So let's put this plan in place for 1 year, which I know you don't like. Oh, by the way, when I went to the junior and I said, you're not on the house split, you're getting 5%, he was pretty good with math. He knew the team last year had done $1.5 million to the team. So what's 5% of $1.5 million? He knew he was not going to make $75,000 that year. So he's all in on the team. He is all in on, tell me what you want me to do. I'll do any tour. I'll pick up checks. I'll make calls for you because I'm getting 5% of the whole. I get this. This is the stuff that you've been working on for 25, 30 years. I'm going to help you do it a little bit better. 12 months later, they all made more, even though the percentages were less. You can't make this stuff up. That's why I love this business after all these years. This cat, the senior, after 12 months, he's making more now, but he really now is working, should I say less? Is that a good way to say it? He's working more efficiently. He's working, because now this young guy gets all the stuff that maybe he had to do. And of course the associate, he was in his mid-30s, he's now delegating a bunch of stuff here. They're now spending more time on the more valuable stuff that they should have been doing. They're getting the leverage that they want. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. This guy calls me, he says, Mike, I know I was mad at you a year ago, but this has been a beautiful thing. We need to start increasing this number right now. He has contributed so much to our success. Now remember, he's an industrial broker, and the world got real good to the industrial brokers the last 4 or 5 years. But he did contribute, as well as a wonderful marketplace. And so he said, I want to crank this up a point per year for the next 3 years. I want to go 5, I want to go 6, I want to go 7, I want to go 8. And he says, and we both will give up on an allocated basis what we need to do to make that happen. That's team brokerage. That's team brokerage. But you're going to take a 23-year-old and add him to your team and tell them they're on a 50-50 split with the house. You can call it a team, but this person's distracted because they're thinking about other stuff besides leveraging you, right? They're worrying about getting their own deal, and then how much does the senior get from you? And listen, you don't have to do it this way, and we got a bunch of plans in here, but this is the one that I think really defines a team. All right, questions? Because I'm turning over to Tim in 10, 12 minutes. Question, and we got a bunch of plans in here. I need one question while I'm transitioning slide decks.
Have you ever had a situation where the associate broker or junior broker is like, that's not enough for me? That percentage is not enough.
They'll say that the second year. They're going to say it the year 2. Now they get a little, now watch. You know those team plans I showed you? You cannot do this kind of compensation plan without having a team plan, because you want to make sure they know what you expect of them to do. Smaller tours, negotiation, making calls, team meetings. So you need to measure what they're doing. There's always the discussion of, I need more. And so if the team that you've brought together believes in abundance, it just seems to work out organically.
Okay, so then follow-up question to that.
Well, and let me just finish the thought,
Sorry.
because it's such a great question. There's some that just will never be satisfied. And there's nothing I can do for that. And they tend to create their own team or do something else. And it's not because the senior wasn't being fair, it's just the chemistry wasn't a perfect fit. But I've seen teams, as Tim have, that have been together for 30 years. I mean, there is a real kindred spirit between these team members. It's just a lovely thing to see. But sometimes there are those that just, it doesn't work out. I'm sorry, go ahead with the follow-up.
The follow-up question was, how do you find those people that have that mindset of abundancy versus scarcity? I mean, do you have a formula or something that?
Yeah,
you
I got a
use,
formula.
Like vision?
I got a formula.
Okay.
It's called instinct. You can do DISC all you want, which we recommend. We like DISC. We
It
recommend.
hasn't worked for me in the past, that's why I'm
It's,
asking.
if you don't get the vibe in 5 minutes, you're not going to get it. If you make the vibe, it's not going to work out. If you say there is no vibe here and you try to manufacture it, I don't know. I don't think it happens. I think when a band comes together, it's because they were meant to be together. I believe in the law of attraction, that there's this universal law that there's just people we're meant to associate with. And if you don't get the vibe, then it might not be a good fit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Instinct's pretty good. You know what, I saw this thing about a decision by intuition. That intuition really is nothing more than all of your mental faculties and capabilities running a program in the back, helping you make decisions. And I believe that you know, those of us that are in real estate that just almost from a photograph know it's a good location, that's not a guesswork. It was through years of experience that in the background the program is running, and you know the access and the car count and right?
Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
If you ever want to understand the machine better.
Which I read, by the way, so maybe some of that stuff came from that. All right. Well, I got 10 minutes for closing techniques. You tell me the ones you want me to do, and then Tim's going to come up and have a lot of fun with you on negotiating tactics. Yes, ma'am. How long have you been in the business? I don't think I'm doing deal swagger for you. A year in the business? It's X-rated. I tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you what I'll do. Well, when you see it, you're going to say, whoa, Mike. I can't believe you did. All right. You want it? I might do it.
You can handle it.
All right. I might show it to you, at my last minute. Others. Let me give you one that I think you should all have. There is a summary close, and then there's 3 first cousins to the summary close. The classic summary close is nothing more than restating what was in the executive summary and then asking an assumptive question. Nate, I know that you'd agree that we've covered thoroughly how we're going to get this building leased to 90%, how we'll negotiate leases that minimize the tenant improvements, how we'll make sure that we get tenants that do leases of at least 5 years and always achieving $35 a square foot more. And because we're going to get those all accomplished, wouldn't you agree that we should move forward together? Now that's a classic summary close which you can never go wrong with, right? But then there is a close which is a first cousin to the summary called the chain close, all right? The chain close is, Nate, you seem to agree that we were on point on how we're going to get this building with our leasing plan, our measurable leasing plan to 90%. Are we in agreement? And then we also talked about the importance of negotiating leases of 5 years or greater, correct?
Yes.
So the chain close is nothing more than getting an acknowledgement. Then there's what's called the momentum close. The momentum close is where you're presenting to someone that is hard to focus. You know, they've been on the cell phone off and on your whole presentation. They're easily distracted. Nathan, let me ask you a question. What impressed you most about our measurable leasing plan? I mean, if you think about how we're going to report to you, what did you like best about it?
You told me what you're going to measure and how often you're going to measure it.
Yep. And your access to getting to it by share file, does that make sense? That,
I love that.
yeah. And so that's what you do in a momentum close. You make sure that they get stuff. It's different than a chain close. Chain close, you're just looking for a head nod, okay? All right? You got to get, because if you don't get feedback from someone that's distracted, they're going to stay distracted. And so your job is to keep them focused as subtly, as skillfully as you possibly can. And then there's what's called the special sauce close. The special sauce close is also a first close into the summary close. Any of y'all from the Northeast? Where are you from? Baltimore. I always think of that as Mid-Atlantic. Should I say, is that Baltimore? It's somewhere, it's close. It's pretty doggone close. Okay. So this is the one you're going to use when you're working with very experienced deal makers out of the Northeast. You say, can you share with me the 3 or 4 most important objectives that you have as it relates to giving me this assignment? And they all sound like Larry David, who, by the way, went to school at the University of Maryland. And they'll say, I know what I'm looking for. I'm like, I said, but tell me what you're looking for. We'll know when we see it. I said, I know you'll know, but I want to know. Mike, and I love this. This is a guy that's never been west of the Mississippi. Mike, this isn't my first rodeo. Like they've been to Houston or Dallas, to a rodeo. Anybody that ever says this is not my first rodeo, they have never been to their first rodeo. I said, come on. He said, Mike, I'm looking for the special sauce and I'll know it when I see it. I said, you got me intrigued now. What are these ingredients in the special sauce? I'm going to tell you what they are. You're going to give me the best price. I don't get retraded at the 11th hour. And I know you have experience selling this kind of property, and just recent experience, by the way. And you really have good relationships with real players. And so now it's time to close. And I said, I pushed you hard 2 weeks ago, but I found out the ingredients to your special sauce, which is no retrades at the 11th hour. We have recent experience, which we've demonstrated. You follow what I'm saying? And so now it's nothing more than like a summary close. But I tell them, you said you knew it when you'd see it, and you had the special sauce, and we now know your ingredients. And because we have those ingredients, wouldn't you agree we should move forward together on the 1st of July? So the summary close, and that can be the case with many of these closing techniques. The summary has derivations, and I know of at least 3 just to the summary close. All right, I got time for one more close. Jamie, which one do you want? Okay. All right. Just move over that chair right there. I need this chair. What close is this? Good thing you knew it. I even know those of you who are distracted that aren't distracted, but you were focused. Good. All right, now watch. Deal swagger, right? So, come sit. How do I want to do this? I need you to just come kind of stand and sit right here, okay? Is that chair too heavy to move? All right. Don't hurt yourself now. Now just put it right there. Okay. So, you two are my team. You two are a client that flew in for a listing presentation on a huge capital markets deal. Y'all with me? Can you visualize that? Big, big deal. And y'all are my team, and y'all made excuses, so to speak, of why Mike's running late. He's working with a big, y'all got it? And they're in the presentation, and I'm a good 15 minutes late. Can you visualize this?
No.
No, Mike Lipsey's not late, but Deal Swagger's always late. I'm late. I'm so sorry. It is crazy out there. I have missed you two so much. Are we doing dinner tonight? Come on. Eddie V's, that's your favorite. I talked to the maitre d'. I know what you want to drink too. How have y'all been?
Been great.
God, I've missed y'all. I have missed y'all so much. I tell you, I got a surprise for y'all. Eddie V's tonight, okay? On the water. They already know what you want. The lobster's been ordered. Now let me tell you, you know what we're doing tomorrow? We're going to do the light show at Epcot. We're going to have dinner in Germany, and they're going to come pick us up, and we're going to walk through the back. They got a back door entrance, and we're going to be on that little island, and we're going to watch the fireworks from there. How cool is that going to be? And I don't know if y'all have any friends in town, because I can bring as many as 8 people. So if y'all got someone you know here in Central Florida, we'll bring them, okay? How's my team doing? They're doing good, aren't they? They're good, aren't they? First round draft choices, both of them. I handpicked them. before I get started, the reason I'm running late, I don't know what number Gulfstream it is that this guy came in with, well, with these people. They don't speak any English. I don't even know where they're from. But they opened up my trunk and put bags in there. And it feels like cash. And we're driving around, and it's the weirdest thing, and I got an interpreter who's explaining what they're looking for. I need you to call MIT this afternoon. I said, what's y'all's cap rate that you're looking for? They said a -2, and I thought I'd misunderstood. I said a -2. I don't even know how you do that mathematically if you get the NOI divided by minus. That sounds like a lot of money to me, doesn't it? That's why the window could be closing, but there ain't many 2 buyers out there, much less a -2. And I need you this afternoon, go to Mercedes, ask for Bobby. I want 2 Sprinter vans, okay? I want the windows blacked out, and I want a bunch of flat screens put in there. They don't need to work, but I want them just to look cool. I find when we drive buyers around in a Sprinter van with flat screens, they pay more. So I'm gonna get a couple of those. What do you think? Here's what I need to know, because I need to get back the guys in my car right now with the bags in the trunk. Do we have the listing? All I wanna know, and then what this cat does, this is really cool. They sit down for just a minute, and they're wearing those expensive loafers, not the Gucci's, the other ones that are more expensive. Ferragamo, yeah, and they never wear socks. They never wear socks, and in New York in January, they got no socks on. It's crazy. I don't know how they must never go outside. Do we have the listing? I want to get you a lot of money before we finish with Disney tomorrow. Do we have the listing? Just yes or no? We got the listing. You hear? Y'all have the model, don't you?
I do.
Send it to me.
Okay.
I might sell it to this guy in the car. Tonight, I'm sending a car to pick y'all up. You know that, don't you? They're going to pick y'all up at 6:30. I'll see you at Eddie V's around 7 o'clock. How's that sound? I love you. You know that. I got to go. All right? Goodbye. Hey, wait. Have you ever seen that before? That's for true. Right, David? That is for real. You're from South Florida, aren't you? Jersey City. Oh, yeah. That is. And the thing is, that's really how but that's not pretend. That's their personality. That is their natural state. So I want you to know, you can't pretend to do deal swagger. Either you're obnoxious or not. And if you are, that's your closing technique, okay? So I've had people mess with me, and they'll send me an email and say, Mike, I'm making a big presentation today. I'm going to use deal swagger this afternoon to close them. And I call them and say, don't. They say, oh, I'm just messing with you. You know, I'm not. You can only do it if that's you, right? But you know, if you came from Jersey City, New Jersey, you see it all the time in the Northeast. And it's theatrical, but it's their personality. All right, I've said enough. Yeah, 2 questions, and I'm turning over to Tim. Yes?
Where do you have all these, and how did you practice them so that they sound like they're not learned like they're yours?
Well, repetition is the mother of skill. And so the best place to close is in low threat situations. On the phone, not big deals. It's just practice. Alternate choice close, minor point close, deal swagger close, sharp angle close, smoke out close. It's just practice. But you're going to find you're going to end up using 5 or 6 most frequently. Summary close for me, sharp angle close, smoke out close, assumptive close I use all the time. Alternative choice close I use every single day. So there's techniques for setting up appointments, alternative choice.
Is that in a book somewhere?
Well,
Do you have an example of each one of those closes?
the answer is yes. In our closing thing, Jennifer's done a nice job. On each one of the techniques, there is a sort of like a little, not full-blown paragraph, but an explanation of each one. All right. Tim gets all the fun. Yeah, go ahead, James. Yeah, go ahead.
So you're going to close, and he's, I got to respect the other brokers on the client. I got to respect the other brokers, and I just can't make that decision today. The client just does not want to give you that yes. He does not want to give you that listing.
Do you want me to jump over on this side of the table and kill you? Because I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to embarrass yourself in front of the committee. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to somebody with lesser experience than us, with not the buyer pool that we have, and you're not going to get as much, and you're going to get messed with in the 11th hour. All right? And you're going to embarrass yourself twice in front of the committee because you got less number and the deal didn't close. What do you know about us? There's 2 things you know about us. What are they? No one messes with us. Is that right? And who gets the best number for our sellers? That's why I'm here, right? So you need to commit today, because guess what? The ship is sailing. If you don't know it, if you're not watching the news, interest rates are moving against you. Every day that you wait, it's moving against you. The rate's going to increase again in July. Going to increase again. Guess what happens? Your property's worth less. You don't have time. You should have sold this thing 6 months ago. You missed the window. And so every day that you delay and hire the wrong firm, you're going to get less. I need your commitment today. Do we have it? Do I have your commitment? It's not going to hurt.
I gotta talk to I still gotta speak to the other.
Then let's talk to him.
Yeah.
Who are you going to talk to? Who?
I gotta talk to CBRE.
CBRE?
Yeah.
No, you're not. CBRE?
Yeah.
That is CBRE.
What are you going to talk to them about? Leasing? Leasing?
Yeah.
Los Angeles? What are you going to talk about? Who else are you going to talk to? Who else? Who would CB you talk? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But I would tell you.
That's called the interrogation technique.
I'm messing with you right now. I'm messing with Tanner. Tim and Jennifer will tell you, I'm pretty soft when I sell. But the reason I think I close so much is I'm so good at needs analysis. If I personally would never sell that way, and I'm just demonstrating that. But that would be Deal Swagger. I'm going back to the role play of Deal Swagger. That was what they would do. They're not letting you off the hook. I mean, they're going to be obnoxious to the very end. It's their personality. And the reason they get hired is the person's thinking, if this guy is this way with the buyers, he's going to get me a lot of money. I don't know if I necessarily like him. I would never sell that way. I'm a needs analysis kind of salesperson. I try to be so thorough in the discovery and the needs analysis, I put together a solution that's perfect. So that's my way. And so my summary close is the one that I would use most frequently because I know what's most important. But I wanted you to experience Deal Swagger. Did you feel it?
I felt it.
Didn't like it, but you felt it. Tim, it's all yours.
Well, let's 60 seconds, 90 seconds, stretch in place. You're permitted to look at your smartphone to make sure that your world hasn't imploded, and then we're going to sprint to lunch.
Who brought that to you?
Well, David and Musa, and then Lisa as well.
They're not bringing me donuts. You see that? So, oh, you decide, what's that?
Nothing.
You decide you come sit over with us today? Oh, thank you.
Mike, you displaced me yesterday.
Oh, did I? Oh, I didn't know that. I saw you sitting over there. So what's up with that?
Even Lonnie took my place.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you think Tanner has just experienced Deal Swagger?
I just experienced Deal Swagger.
I thought you were going to tell me.
Mike, I needed a
Well, you wanted to experience Deal Swagger. That's it.
Mike, I needed a cigarette after that.
I know it's pretty good, isn't it?
God.
Oh wait. Jennifer, you're gonna have a lot of editing to do. You know that, don't you?
Fine. Wait, we gotta read that in.
Okay.
All right. Do it or you got it?
No, I think I got it. But if you don't like what I do, then you can tell me, Rios. Do you have that little portable one that people would just clip on and off real easy, not wired up? Because I'm going to do some role plays with some people, and in case the audio is salvageable, I'd love to be able to just pin them up real quick as they come up. Sorry, Nazi. Yeah. Okay.
There's that.
Great. Thank you. Let's do this. Yeah. I love it. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm vibrating for this next. I'm really, really excited. I love doing this. So, yeah, you know what? Sure, that'd be great, John. I'm shaking like a broker who hasn't checked their email for 45 minutes.
You're in front of people today.
It's like I know. I was speaking to a camera lens yesterday. That is so. Ugh. I know. Well, you know, brokers anyway. We're a form of human. I mean, you know, it's almost a shame. By the way, just so everybody understands, I mean, I want to be I want to be 100% clear about this. If you were to come to Mike and I and say, all right, we want the full boat negotiation. Mike, how many days does it take us to do that? It's a 2-day course. So, I mean, we're just, if there's such thing as the tip of the iceberg, that's what we're going to do here in the next 45 minutes. But we're going to have some fun with it. How many of you would characterize yourself as just a bulldog negotiator? Okay, Jennifer's a bulldog negotiator. Anybody else? How many of you consider yourself a deal maker? Now see, I think if you're a bulldog negotiator, you should be a chief administrative officer, you should be a lawyer. If you're a broker, you need to be a deal maker because you don't get paid unless you make the deal. Now that's not about giving up things you shouldn't give up, but it's about knowing which levers to pull. It's about being able to read the terrain and understand when you're being played versus when you actually have something that you genuinely need to negotiate. So as Mike and I talked about this, all right, what should we spend our time doing? We don't have all the time in the world. We decided to focus on the psychological aspect, emotional states, dirty tricks, things like that. But let me say this, because all of those slides that many of you just saw me click through at light speed is all about going into a negotiation with the best information. As I mentioned to you yesterday, an old colleague of mine used to say, you cannot negotiate you cannot negotiate fact, you can only negotiate opinion. But if we don't start from a factual basis, then we're just arguing opinions, and the person who wins there is the one who has more leverage. It might be more experience, it might be age, it might be something that isn't fair, but it's an advantage that they have. Years ago, I was giving a speech in St. Petersburg, Florida in early spring. And it was unseasonably cool in St. Petersburg that day. It was 55 degrees. And I got this ballroom full of Floridians with puffy down coats and scarves and wool caps and gloves, and they're huddled and they're shivering. And I said, you know, interestingly enough, this week in Salt Lake City, we hit 51 degrees. And I said, you know what I was doing? I was at the park with my toddlers in t-shirts because it felt like, I got my Chicagoan back there nodding his head. You know, look at Lincoln Park in the spring. It's like everybody comes back to life. It's so grateful to be outside again. And everybody's looking at me. I said, so you think it's cold right now, right? Yeah, it's cold, it's cold. So I don't think it's cold, but that's our opinion. Can we agree it's 55 outside? That's the difference between negotiating in fact and opinion. If we can agree it's 55, we have a better jumping off point to talk about how we feel about that, or how we might be able to negotiate a deal around that. Now, what we're going to spend our time doing is talking about the difference between conditions and tactics, and then focusing on tactics. So Rachel, you're in land, right? Okay, so Rachel, if I come as a buyer and I say, I need an 18-month due diligence period on this deal before any money goes hard. And Tanner's your seller, and he says, that's ridiculous. You know, how long do you need to do due diligence? You need 90 days. I want all cash. I want you to close in 90 days. Okay? But you know, because you're a land expert, that the municipality I'm in has a really long approval process. And what I'm proposing to develop on the land is something that's a non-conforming use. So I'm going to have to go through a process, right, of either getting a variance or getting it rezoned. And is that a quick process? Generally speaking, no. So my question to you, see who already understands the definition, is me trying to negotiate a longer due diligence a condition or a tactic? It's a condition, because I don't control the design review process or the granting of a variance. It's a condition. How many of you are, let's say, in industrial leasing? Okay, so Abraham, you're in industrial leasing, and I come to you, I'm looking for some space, and the landlord says, I want a 10-year lease on this space. And I say, I want a 5-year lease on this space. And the reason I want a 5-year lease is because I was just awarded a contract by GM to provide parts for the new Tahoe and Suburban, and it's not the Jimmy anymore, or whatever, the Yukon that's coming out. And frankly, I don't know if that contract's going to be renewed in year 6. So is my asking for a 5-year lease a condition or a tactic? It's a condition, right? I'm not making this up. It's something that I have to deal with. So one of the most important things you can do whenever you are negotiating something in a deal is this something that's going to be dealt with and might transfer to another buyer, or is this just a dirty trick? Okay. Dirty tricks is what I want to focus on today. A dirty trick is just a fishing expedition. It's just somebody looking to see what they can get. Sometimes through a bluff, sometimes through hard nose. I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but that's all it is. It's probably, very rarely would it even be a deal killer if they didn't get it. They're just trying to see what they can get. And for those of you who live in a world where everything's lollipops and unicorns and rainbows, Mike did a program years ago with corporate real estate professionals, and he was going to talk about they wanted him to talk about the dirty tricks. And so he's thinking, great, we're going to talk about the dirty tricks, we're going to talk about how to neutralize them, but Mike, what do they really want?
How can we use them as an offensive maneuver?
Right? I mean, this is how a lot of people view the world. So we're going to go through a lot of these, but the first thing I want to talk about is when you are in a negotiation, you have a choice. And I need you to recognize that it is a choice about what emotional state you use and how it varies how you proceed from that place. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you buy, sell, or lease commercial real estate? Okay. Nathan, what's your specialty?
Generalist, small town.
Okay, small town. So which office building do you own?
I own a tattoo shop. I don't necessarily know.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So you don't own an office building, right?
No.
Have you ever leased office?
I have not personally leased an office
Okay.
for myself.
How about industrial? No, not even for yourself. Have you ever done it for a third party?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, okay. See, one of the things that we don't like to admit, you go to a cocktail party when you're a commercial real estate broker, and somebody says, what do you do for a living? And you say, oh, I'm an investment real estate agent. I sell real estate. I lease industrial properties. You know, that's not exactly true. If you were really honest as a broker and you came to somebody when they ask you, Rachel comes to me and says, Tim, what do you do? I'm in sales. Now, what happens at the cocktail party when you tell somebody you're in sales? Yeah, it's like, I'm okay, I don't need any vitamins, I'm good, I'm all up to date on my life insurance. But that's what we are. Unless you own the office building, the owner is the one that's doing the lease, okay? If you are an investment agent, the seller is the one that has title. The buyer has the down payment. The lender has the big sack of money. You are an intermediary. That is what you do. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about time is I tell people in this business all the time. Anybody, like I said yesterday, who monetizes their time works for a living. So what do you actually do? You sell your expertise leveraged against your time. Because of that, most of the time you cannot afford to be anything but an adult in the transaction. So let me tell you the difference. In the parent emotional state, what does an okay parent act like with their child? A parent who's in a good place emotionally, everything's going okay. Tell me some of the things a parent might do in that situation. Come on, I know I got some parents in here.
Let's talk about it.
Hey, let's talk. Or, hey, you know what? You did a great job on that test, Houston. Why don't we go out for ice cream? You know? Hey, kids, I'm going to Orlando in the middle of the summer. Wouldn't it be a great idea if it came out and brought you to theme parks when it's 105 degrees outside? Hey, that's the okay parent. Yeah, that's what I did this week. Okay. That's what an okay parent does. What does a not okay parent do?
Stay with grandpa.
Right.
Leave their kid in the car while they go.
When I was role playing with you, what state was I coming from?
You're coming from
New York.
the Swagger, or what's the question? Sorry.
So when I was, you asked me that you wanted to talk to other people, and I came and got in your face, I was coming from what state?
Oh, the emotional state.
Angry parent. I was in your face, I'm, you know, that's an example of angry parent.
Yeah. Look, if anybody's ever had children, you're all going to have your moments where you think, uh-oh, I was a little bit out of line. I lost it, right? Okay. So a not okay parent is, they can be very demeaning. They can be very condescending. I mean, even physically, Mike was here above you, right?
I thought he was really going to jump over.
I mean, it seemed like it. There was a little bit of trepidation there, wasn't there? So recognize that is, you got the same parent, which assumes kind of a one-up position, and I can be okay or I can be not okay. How about a child? What's an okay child like?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's an obedient child, yeah. Yeah, but, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I want to go to the theme park. I want to go out for ice cream. Thanks, I want to go out and play catch. It's really cool. What's a not okay child like? Now, think about this. The way to think about it is, you're a child, and I have just scolded the living daylights out of you. How does that child feel?
Sad.
All of those things. Now, what does that child want more than anything in the world right then and there? To be accepted. Okay, now that's really, really critical, because as a father, I won't tell you how many kids I have, because then all the jokes about Tim lives in Utah and he's got a lot of kids will start pouring out. But I can tell you that, so I have one daughter especially, that whenever she would get in trouble, one of the things that she would do is she would come and try to get a hug from me. Now, you might think that was a manipulation to try to diffuse the situation, but what I learned about her personality is it wasn't that at all. It was, Daddy, are we okay? Do you still love me? And I would have to help her understand, honey, I love you. I don't love this thing that happened. And separate. Because a child who is not okay wants anything, will do anything to get back in the good graces of the person whose love and acceptance they want. So it's really important to understand, it's one of the easiest ways to simplify emotional states, is just to think of parents and children. They could be okay or not okay, or you could be an adult, someone who stays centered, doesn't let the emotion take advantage of them. Okay? So we're going to just go through, have some fun here. First, negotiating to win, the tactic of emotion. All right, who has been in the business less than 3 years? Okay, Adrian, come on down. Now, Adrian, I'm not your employer. I think it's technically not, you're not supposed to ask people their age, but there's a 2 in front of your age, isn't there?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So Adrian's in his 20s. I have 4 children in their 20s. Go ahead and have a seat. So, and I'm, this month is 27 years for me in the business, so there's a little bit of an experience differential here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, awesome. So what's your specialty?
Industrial.
Industrial? Okay. Do you do any kind of investment sales? Pin that on your collar for me for a second. Do you do investment sales? Do you do leasing?
Leasing and
leasing. Okay, awesome. So I'm your landlord, and you just brought a lease to me. Okay, why don't you go ahead and hand me the lease? Okay, all right. Yeah, well, let me just flip through it. I know what I'm looking for. Adrian, I got a question for you. Did you bring a garbage bag with you?
No.
You didn't? Okay, well then you're just gonna have to put this bag in your bag and round file it when you get a chance, because this is a joke. Didn't we talk about what kind of deal I was looking for, Adrian? Did we?
Yes.
We did. Does this look like that deal to you? Then what the hell am I looking at this for? What's the matter, Adrian? Do I need to go find another broker right now? Don't get upset. I actually really like you, Adrian. So what's happening here?
You're disappointed in his performance because he brought you something you didn't want.
Where's my emotional state?
Angry parent.
Angry parent. Okay? What am I trying to get him to do?
Do better.
It's much more insidious than that.
Break him down.
Yeah, what emotional state do I want him to drop into?
The child.
I want him to get into the not okay child. Because if I can emotionally get him, somebody who's now feeling uncomfortable, I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to upset you. In broker parlance, what's likely to come out of his mouth next?
I'll get it fixed.
I'll get it fixed, or what can we do to make this better, and I'll give up some fee. That's exactly what I want, okay? Because is there a decent chance, Adrian, that this deal is actually within market. I mean, maybe it's a lower offer to start off with, but we still have a lot of negotiation to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's the reality of the situation. But what I'm trying to do is extract things from him by getting in that one-up position, berating him, and he's trying to get back in my good graces. This is one of the most dangerous tactics when there is a huge discrepancy in age or experience level. Veronica's like,
I just went
preach.
down this road.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, you won?
I won.
Good, 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 good. So let's talk about this. How does he neutralize this? Give Adrian some examples of how you would neutralize this.
I presented you with a lease. It may not be perfect, but I'm presenting you with a lease.
Okay, all right, good. Kirk.
You could ask him like what specifically is upsetting you, like break it down a little bit.
Awesome, great. What else?
Set expectations similar to how you're like, hey, we talked about this, didn't we? We talked about a better deal than this. If he set expectations, said something either earlier or during this point, you know, he can essentially do the same thing to you. Be like, well, I did say market norm is X. And that was, you know, a hint to the expectation that was set, even though you're obviously not happy with it.
Great. Now, yes, sir.
I've had something like this before. I know what you wanted. This is what's out there right now.
Okay.
You just want to say, you know, it's no. I go, we can say no. We can come back at them with something different, but this is what's out there right now.
Okay.
What came to us.
I would have said, hey, I'll throw this in the trash can. Let's start with a new lease and start looking at where we're gonna find common ground. Where's your trash can?
Okay, now, what's interesting about that, the difference, not that we couldn't modify that, but if you look at the neutralizers up there, you really have a few choices. And most of the time, and it reflects the answers that most of you gave, you're all staying in what emotional state? You're staying in the adult state. Look, it's a lease. I present it to you. You don't like it? Okay. Hey, this is what's out there right now. You know, this is just matter of fact. Let's have a discussion. Let's figure this out. Now, interestingly, Jordan, you were on the cusp of going angry parent on me, aren't you?
That's right.
Okay, right? So now what's that going to sound like?
Humor.
Okay, so you could, yeah, you could mix. I mean,
Sarcasm in there.
humor. So let's say Adrian's me now, and he's just told me what a joke this offer is. I can say, well, you know, they say the funniest jokes is they're funny because they're based in truth. You know, I mean, we can start trying to diffuse it with a little bit of humor. We could also go angry parent, which is, hey, you know what? We got to start somewhere, don't we? Don't we, Tim? I mean, look, you got somebody that put something in writing. Let's go try to make something happen. All right? You don't like it? Fine. Counter it where you want it to be. Now, that's rough for somebody who's 20-something to do to somebody who's been in the business 3 times longer. So it's not usually something that you're going to do. But I will tell you, I'm 23 years old. Not now. I'm 23 years old, and I have this gentleman who's at least twice my age, and he keeps going angry parent on me time after time after time after time. And every time he would go not okay parent and use emotion on me, I would become the not okay child. I'll be nicer. I'll do more. I'll try to make it better next time, sir. And it got worse and worse and worse until one day, and if any of you have known me for long enough, you know that, I mean, I have my tipping point, but I'm usually pretty easygoing. But one day, I lost it. I blew a gasket, and I got into a screaming match with this guy. Our relationship was awesome after that. He could not respect the fact that I was a constant doormat for him. And once he knew that I could stand up and defend myself, we were golden for the rest of the time that we did deals together. So judiciously, even if you're younger, sometimes you can choose to go angry parent. But for the most part, all of you had fantastic ideas. You stayed in that adult state. All right? Good job, Adrian. Thank you. Let me take that. And you're 20. I knew that, but I didn't want you told me that the other day. Round of applause for Adrian. Oh, the bogey. Got it. Who's in landlord rep? Okay, Jordana, come down with me, please. you've got a lapel, you can clip that on. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Jordana, I've got good news for you. What's your product type, real quick?
Office.
Office. Jordana, I've got great news for you.
Great.
Do you want to hear what the great news is?
Sure do.
Okay. Well, we love what you're doing. Committee loved everything that I went back to present them, because I did have to go back and get permission from the committee to move forward on this. And, you know, look, we're excited. We think you're the right person for the deal. I mean, we really, really love you. But we need a lower fee.
What did you have in mind?
Okay, now let's hit the pause button for just a second. It's not the worst thing in the world, depending on how she develops that. But what's one of the problems with what did you have in mind?
She put the ball on your court.
Oh, you're acquiescent.
To the person who's using this as a dirty trick, it's like, hey, I'm going to get something. I don't know what I'm going to get, but I'm going to get something. It's just like when somebody asks you for fee, we'll talk about this like an 11th hour squeeze. When somebody asks you for fee, if the first thing out of your mouth is not some version of no, it's not a matter of what, it's just how much are you going to give. That's how I hear it. And that's how they, or when they say, look, I need you to lower your fee from 5 down to 3. And you say, well, I don't know, I got to go talk to my broker and I talk to my senior agent. Nothing good happens from that. Because I just told you, number one, I have no decision-making authority. I also told you you're getting something, but it's just a matter of finding out how much. Now, where she could go with that is she could say, you know, get a frame of reference. Like, what do I think is acceptable? Because maybe she padded the fee and maybe it would be okay and she can do a little bit of play acting and ultimately give me the fee when she's really, really happy. So it's not necessarily wrong. But what else could she do? How else could we neutralize this?
Do you want to attract the best tenant, and do you want to command the highest dollar for that rent?
Okay. All right. Good. Now, one of the best transitions when somebody is pulling the bogey on you, because what the bogey is we're trading emotions for economics. I love you, and because I love you, isn't my love worth something? Right? It's just a dirty trick. And so the transition, because you could absolutely go the direction you're talking, but the transition is, I love you too. I love you too. Thank you. I love the feedback. I'm glad the committee was pleased. So you love me, I love you. Everything's great. Now, Jordana, tell me why you're not going to lower my fee, or why you're not going to lower your fee.
The market fee, the fee I showed you is market, in line with market, and like Jordan said, it's going to attract the best tenants and get people through the building and get us a lease signed.
Okay. All right. The point is, mirror the emotion back to them, and now you can kind of go through, no, I love you too. But no, your love isn't worth 2 points because we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot. Houston.
I like to say one or two things, but the best one that's worked out is what services would you like me to eliminate in order to...
Ah, Mike, we call that the empty cupboard, don't we? Yeah, that's a good one. And sometimes we demo that in a different one, but that's empty cupboard. It's like, look, I love you too. We came in, we wanted this. We wanted to be as aggressive as we possibly could to land this assignment. And all the things we were going to do ultimately are the function of the fee. So what of the things we've discussed can we remove? Well, I don't want you to remove anything, right? Oh, okay. So, you know, you want the Mercedes and you want to pay the used Kia price, right? It just doesn't work. I mean, no knock on against a Kia, but it's like, it's just not the same thing. So, right, Jordana?
That is true.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, big round of applause for Jordana. Thank you. Okay. Oh, the charmer. We won't go through this one completely, but let me tell you the difference in the charmer. What a charmer would do differently is, we go back and use the Adrian example. I would have treated him like he was my long-lost son when I first met him. Adrian, I'm so excited to be working with you. I can't tell you, you know, I remember when I was your age. I remember how young and hungry I was. And your senior agent, and I got to tell you, they tell me you are a first-round draft choice. I know you're going to do great things in this business. I can't wait. I hope I'm around long enough to see what happens. Okay? It's that I'm really schmoozing him. I'm really trying to get in this place where he thinks, oh man, Tim's like that long-lost uncle I never had. And I really, really love him, because then when I pull emotion on you, you're already even deeper into the parent-child thing. So the one thing with a charmer is don't fall under the spell. Anybody ever gone on a first date that was really, really awesome, and then a few dates later you're like, whoa, what happened to that person I went out with that first night? Ever happened to anybody? Okay, don't fall under the spell, right? Reserve judgment. Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that. That's great. Awesome. We're going to do a good job for you. Stay an adult, right? Oh, the ice pick. Where are my agency people, my landlord rep again? Okay, Abraham, come on down. You're on the landlord side right now, okay? Have you pinned that somewhere if you can? Okay. Now, let's turn our chairs so they don't face each other. What does it mean when I turn the chairs around like that? We're starting on the phone. Alex, you asked earlier, how do we do this so that it doesn't sound scripted or robotic? I role play everything. I played baseball growing up, and I can promise you that batting practice is not like hitting in the bottom of the ninth inning with the bases loaded, the count is full, and there's 2 outs. All right? There's no type of practice that can replicate that situation. But if you step up to the plate not knowing how to stand, not knowing where your elbow needs to be, not having developed the core strength to come around fast enough to hit a pitch that's going, I mean, I never got to where they were pitching 80 or 90 miles an hour, but that's not the time to be figuring that out. So when I'm role-playing a phone call, even if I'm with Abraham, the fact is I don't want to see him because I don't see when you're on the phone, so everything comes through in tonality. Okay? Now here's what Abraham doesn't know. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I just went and had an early lunch, or I had a late breakfast. And I ate so much that I'm probably not going to want to eat again till dinner, right? Hey, Abraham, how you doing?
How you doing, Tim?
Hey, look, I'm doing great, buddy. I got great news for you. I have got the lease. I mean, we are on the 1 yard line of getting this deal done. Does that sound good?
Of course.
Okay. Well, cool. Let me tell you what